Picture yourself standing beneath a sky so clear and unpolluted that every star feels close enough to touch, a sky not yet explained by science, but alive with meaning and mystery. For our ancient ancestors, this celestial dome was no mere spectacle. It was a sacred text, a divine map, and the very source of their understanding of existence. They gazed upward and saw not random points of light, but stories grand, sweeping narratives of creation that connected the heavens to the earth, the divine to the human, and the past to the eternal. These were not simple tales to pass the time. They were the foundational beliefs that shaped cultures, guided civilizations, and attempted to answer humanity's oldest and most profound question: where did it all begin? From the banks of the Nile to the plains of Mesopotamia, from the dense rainforests of the Maya to the icy fjords of the Norse, every great civilization looked to the stars and saw something uniquely theirs, yet strangely familiar. The Egyptians aligned their monumental pyramids with the belt of Orion, believing it was the gateway to the afterlife. The builders of Stonehenge tracked the solstices with breathtaking precision, marking the rebirth of the sun each year. The indigenous Australians navigated vast deserts using star maps encoded in song and story for thousands of years. What's truly remarkable is that these cultures, separated by continents and millennia, often arrived at shockingly similar ideas: cosmic eggs, world-forming battles, emergent journeys, as if humanity shared a collective dream about the birth of the universe. In this video, we're setting out on a journey to recover those lost dreams, to unearth the legends of cosmic creation that have been buried by time, yet still pulse beneath the surface of history. We'll explore how ancient myths were more than just folklore. They were sophisticated blends of astronomy, philosophy, and spirituality that helped humans make sense of their place in a vast and often intimidating cosmos. You'll discover how the stories told under starry skies millennia ago might still hold clues about the nature of reality, the structure of the universe, and the timeless human urge to reach beyond what we can see and touch. So come with us, let's travel back through the ages, decode the language of the stars, and reconnect with a time when the sky was not a void, but a living, breathing story waiting to be told. One of the most captivating and widespread ideas about how everything began is the concept of the cosmic egg. It's a breathtakingly simple yet profound symbol that emerged independently in cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of years. This wasn't a story of construction or battle, but one of incubation and birth, a quiet, patient unfolding of all existence from a single, perfect point of potential. Imagine that before time, before space, there was only this primordial egg floating in the void, holding within its shell the entire blueprint of the universe, just waiting for the right moment to crack open. In the ancient Sanskrit hymns of the Rig Veda, one of the oldest texts known to humanity, this idea is beautifully articulated as the Brahmanda. The word itself is a combination of Brahma, the expansive, infinite spirit, and Anda, which simply means egg. This cosmic egg is described as the source of all, containing both the unmanifest and the manifest universe. When it hatched, it gave birth to Brahma, the creator god, who then went on to form all the worlds and beings. But it's more than just a birth, it's a separation. The upper half of the shell became the heavens, the lower half became the earth, and the space in between became the atmosphere. This is a creation story that speaks of division and order emerging from a state of unified, limitless possibility. Across the world, in the philosophical mystery schools of ancient Greece, a strikingly similar narrative was being told. The Orphic tradition, a deeply spiritual and esoteric belief system, centered on the deity Phanes, the firstborn god of light. Phanes emerged from a shimmering, silver egg that had been formed in the dark waters of chaos. He was a radiant, androgynous being, often depicted with golden wings, and he carried the seeds of the gods and the universe within him. His very act of emergence set the cosmos in motion, establishing the cycles of time and the order of the seasons. He was the primal creator, the one who brought light and structure into being simply by coming into existence. So why an egg? Why did this specific symbol resonate so powerfully across these diverse human experiences? The egg is perhaps the most universal symbol of potential life that our ancestors knew. It represents a self-contained world, holding everything needed for creation within a fragile, perfect shell. It symbolizes fertility, wholeness, and the promise of new beginnings. For ancient minds trying to conceptualize the infinite, to picture a state where everything and nothing existed simultaneously, the egg provided a perfect, relatable metaphor. It was a natural symbol that allowed them to visualize the universe not as something built by hand, but as something born, something that grew organically from a seed of ultimate potential. The fact that both Hindu sages in India and Greek mystics arrived at this same powerful imagery, with no possible way of having communicated with each other, points to something deeply fundamental in the human psyche. It suggests a shared, intuitive understanding of creation, an archetype, as some psychologists might say, that transcends culture and geography. This parallel invites us to ponder not just the stories themselves, but the minds that conceived them. They looked at the world around them, saw the miracle of life emerging from an egg, and intuitively applied that same principle of contained potential to the greatest mystery of all, the origin of the entire cosmos. It represents a universal human inclination to explain the incomprehensible through the familiar, finding infinity in the most humble and natural of symbols. While the cosmic egg presents a serene vision of creation, the ancient Egyptians envisioned something equally profound but born from a different kind of alchemy, one that emerged not from a shell, but from an endless, dark, and watery nothingness. This was the primordial ocean known as None, a boundless and inert expanse of chaotic potential that existed before time itself. From these silent, black waters, the first tangible thing in all of existence miraculously arose, a pyramid-shaped mound of earth called the Benben Stone. This was not just any piece of land, it was the very first island of order rising from the sea of chaos, the fundamental building block upon which all of creation would be anchored. It's a powerful image that would go on to shape not only Egyptian religion but its most iconic architecture, with the Benben stone believed to be the direct inspiration for the obelisks and pyramids that would later define their skyline. Upon this primordial mound, the story takes a fascinating and deeply personal turn. The god Atum Ra, a deity who embodied both the setting sun and the creative force of the universe, willed himself into existence. He was the first being, and he found himself utterly alone in this new, ordered space. Filled with a creative urge, he then brought forth the first two other gods through an act that is described in different ways across ancient texts. In some versions, he masturbated, using his own hand to create the next generation. In others, he spat them out. While this might sound strange to modern ears, these actions were deeply symbolic to the Egyptians. They represented the idea of creation coming from one's own essence, a self-sufficient act that required no partner. From this, the first divine couple was born, Shu, the god of air and dryness, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture and mist. This first family then gave rise to the next foundational layer of the cosmos. Shu and Tefnut themselves gave birth to Jeb, the solid earth, and Nut, the star-studded sky. The imagery here is some of the most beautiful and enduring in all of mythology. The Egyptians pictured Geb as a man lying recumbent beneath his sister wife, Nut, who was a woman arched over him, her body covered in stars. They were locked in a passionate embrace until their father, Shu, the heir, was forced to step between them and push them apart, forever separating the sky from the earth and creating the space where life could flourish. From the union of Geb and Nut came the most famous Egyptian gods: Osiris, the god of the afterlife; Isis, the goddess of magic and motherhood; Seth, the god of chaos and violence; and Nephthys, a protective goddess. Together, these 9 deities Atum Ra, Shu, Tefnut, Geb, Nut, Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys formed the great Ennead of Heliopolis, the central divine family that structured the Egyptian universe. This was far more than just a story to explain where rain or mountains came from. It was the very bedrock of Egyptian society and kingship. The pharaoh was not just a political ruler. He was considered the living embodiment of Horus, the son of Osiris and Isis, and thus a direct descendant of this original divine lineage. This creation myth gave the pharaoh an unassailable divine right to rule, directly linking his authority to the moment the universe was formed. His role was to maintain the mat, the cosmic order, balance, and harmony that was established at creation against the ever-present forces of chaos or Isfet. Every ritual, every law, and every monument was, in a way, a reenactment of that first moment when order emerged from the waters of none. This connection between myth and the physical world was made stunningly literal through astronomy. The Egyptians were meticulous observers of the night sky, and they saw their stories written in the stars. The constellation we know as Orion was seen as the god Osiris, the lord of the afterlife. The nearby star Sirius, which heralded the annual flooding of the Nile and the rebirth of the land, was associated with his wife, Isis. Most remarkably, the 3 pyramids at Giza are aligned with a precision that mirrors the 3 stars of Orion's belt. This was no coincidence. It suggests that the entire necropolis was designed as a massive celestial map, a recreation on Earth of the heavenly duat or afterlife realm. By burying their god-kings within these stone structures, the Egyptians believed they were facilitating the pharaoh's soul's journey to join Osiris in the stars, thus completing a sacred cycle that began with the first god standing on the first mound of Earth. Their creation myth was not locked in a distant past. It was a living, breathing reality played out every night overhead and every day in the rule of their king. If the serene emergence from the cosmic egg and the self-created God on the primordial mound represent one way to envision creation, the worldviews that emerged from ancient Mesopotamia offer a dramatically different, far more turbulent vision. Here, in the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, order was not born from quiet potential or divine will alone, but was violently carved out of a raging, primordial chaos through epic celestial warfare. The most famous account of this struggle is the Babylonian epic known as the Enuma Elish, a story so foundational it was recited during the most important New Year festival to reaffirm the very fabric of their universe and the power of their king. This saga begins not with a single deity but with 2 primordial forces, Apsu representing the sweet, fresh waters and Tiamat, the vast saltwater ocean. From their union, successive generations of younger, noisier gods were born. Their clamor and energy so disturbed the original quiet of Apsu that he resolved to destroy them. However, the clever god learned of the plot and struck first, putting Apsu to sleep and building his own divine abode upon the defeated god's body. This act of patricide set the stage for the main conflict. Enraged by the death of her mate and provoked by the younger god's continued unrest, Tiamat, the Great Mother, decided to become the agent of chaos herself. She raised an army of monstrous creatures and appointed her new consort, Kingu, as its commander. The younger gods, terrified and leaderless, found their champion in the brilliant and powerful Marduk, the god of Babylon. He agreed to face Tiamat on one condition. If he emerged victorious, he would be granted supreme and unchallenged authority over all the gods. The ensuing battle is the heart of the epic. Marduk, armed with a net, a club, and his most powerful weapon, the 7 winds of a storm, rode forth in his chariot to confront the dragon like Tiamat. He challenged her to single combat, and as she opened her mouth to consume him, he drove the winds into her belly, inflating her and rendering her helpless. He then shot an arrow that sliced through her heart, ending her life. With the monstrous Chaos Queen defeated, Marduk then performed his most creative and enduring act. He split her massive body into 2 parts like a clamshell. With one half he fashioned the dome of the heavens, and with the other he solidified the earth below. He established the seasons and the movements of the stars, organized the calendar, and from the blood of the defeated Kingu, he created humanity for the express purpose of serving the gods, thus freeing them from labor. It is crucial to understand that this was far more than a religious story. It was a masterstroke of political propaganda. The Enuma Elish, as we know it, was codified and promoted when Babylon rose to become the dominant power in Mesopotamia under King Hammurabi. By casting their city's patron god, Marduk, as the supreme hero and creator of the universe, the Babylonians were making a bold theological and political statement. They were asserting that their city was not just another kingdom, but the very center of the cosmic order, and their king was Marduk's chosen representative on Earth. This wasn't even the original version of the myth. Centuries earlier, the Sumerians, whom the Babylonians inherited much of their culture from, had their own creation stories where different gods, like Enlil of Nippur or Anu of Uruk, played the central role. The myth evolved directly alongside shifting political power, demonstrating how a culture's story of cosmic origins is often a reflection of its earthly realities and ambitions. This worldview of a universe perpetually balanced between order and chaos deeply influenced every aspect of Mesopotamian life, including their astonishingly advanced astronomy. They were meticulous observers of the heavens, meticulously tracking the movements of planets they viewed as wandering gods and mapping constellations they saw as divine symbols. A solar eclipse wasn't merely an astronomical event. It was a potential sign that the forces of chaos were threatening the divine order, requiring rituals and prayers to the gods to restore balance. This intimate connection between the celestial and the divine meant that their priests were also their scientists, and their myths were their scientific models. The reverberations of this cosmic battle narrative extended far beyond Mesopotamia's borders, leaving a lasting imprint on Western thought. Scholars have long noted striking parallels between the Enuma Elish and the creation account in the first chapter of the Hebrew Bible, Genesis. Both stories begin with a formless, watery deep. In Hebrew, the word is teham, which is linguistically related to Tiamat. In both, light is created before the celestial bodies, and the dome of the sky is fashioned to separate the waters above from the waters below. Most significantly, both narratives share the core theme of a sovereign deity bringing order out of chaos. While the Hebrew account is strictly monotheistic and removes all traces of violent theomachy, the structural and thematic similarities suggest a shared cultural milieu or a conscious reworking of these ancient Near Eastern tropes to fit a new theological vision. The legacy of Marduk's battle reminds us that our oldest stories about the universe are rarely just about the stars. They are profound mirrors held up to our own societies, our struggles for power, and our eternal quest to impose meaning and order on the beautiful chaos of existence. Now, let's journey from the structured realms of Mesopotamia to a worldview that challenges the very notion of a separate, finished creation. For the indigenous cultures of Australia, the moment of origin is not a singular event locked in a distant past, but a living, breathing dimension of the present known as the Dreamtime or Inca. This concept is perhaps one of the most profound and beautiful ever conceived by humanity, representing a timeless, eternal reality where the creative actions of ancestral beings continue to resonate and shape existence. It is a world where every mountain, every river, every creature, and every star in the night sky is not just an object, but a chapter in an ongoing story, a testament to a journey that never truly ended. At the heart of this continuous creation narrative are the ancestral beings, powerful entities who emerged from a formless, sleeping earth and began to travel across the landscape. One of the most significant of these is the rainbow serpent, a colossal being whose movements carved out the very topography of the continent. As it pushed up from beneath the earth, it formed mountain ranges. As it slithered across the plains, it left behind the winding paths of rivers and creeks, and where it rested, it created waterholes and valleys. But its creation was not merely physical. The rainbow serpent is also a moral and spiritual force, a giver of law and language, who established the rules for social conduct and the sacred rituals that connect people to the land. Other beings, like the Wandjina sky spirits with their halo-like headdresses, brought rain and storms, painting their images on cave walls to maintain their creative power. This profound connection to the land is mirrored perfectly in the sky above. Aboriginal astronomical knowledge is not a separate science, but is woven inseparably into the fabric of these dreaming stories. Take the emu in the sky, a constellation not formed by connecting stars with lines, but by observing the dark patches of the Milky Way. To the casual observer, it is simply a lane of cosmic dust, but to an initiated viewer, the shape of a giant emu emerges with stunning clarity. Its position throughout the year is a precise celestial calendar. When the emu appears to be running in the evening sky, it signals the time when real emus are laying their eggs, guiding people to the best hunting grounds. When it seems to vanish, it indicates the eggs are hatching and hunting should cease to ensure future populations. This is knowledge that has been passed down orally for over 65,000 years, a testament to a sophisticated and sustainable way of living with the world, not simply on top of it. This entire worldview is preserved and communicated through an unbroken chain of oral traditions, songlines, and rock art that is some of the oldest on the planet. Songlines are intricate navigational routes that crisscross the continent, where the very lyrics of the songs describe the landmarks, water sources, and sacred sites created by the ancestral beings. To sing the song is to navigate the land, and to walk the land is to sing the creation story into being once more. The rock art, some paintings being tens of thousands of years old, is not merely decoration. It is a powerful act of renewal, a way of tapping into the dreaming and ensuring the continuous vitality of the world and its laws. This stands in stark contrast to the linear, historical time perception dominant in Western thought. In the dreaming, time is not an arrow moving from a point of creation toward an unknown future. It is a vast, cyclical, and ever-present network of relationships. A person is not just born into a family, but into a specific landscape and a specific story that began in the dreaming and continues through them. Their responsibility is to care for that country, to perform the ceremonies, and to tell the stories, thus actively participating in the maintenance of creation itself. This holistic vision, which sees no separation between the people, the land, the animals, and the cosmos, offers a radical and desperately needed perspective in our modern age of environmental disconnect. It challenges us to see ourselves not as masters of nature, but as part of an intricate, interconnected web of life that we have a sacred duty to nurture and protect. Leaving the sun-drenched lands and cyclical time of the dreaming, we voyage now to a world forged in ice and fire, a creation story that stands in stark, brutal contrast. The Norse vision of the beginning is not one of serene emergence or divine will, but of elemental chaos, primal violence, and a universe literally carved from the corpse of a murdered giant. This is a mythos that reflects the harsh realities of the Scandinavian world. A philosophy where existence is earned through struggle and order is a hard-won victory against the ever-looming specter of chaos. Our story starts not with a god or a thought, but with a vast, yawning emptiness known as Ginnungagap. This was the great void, a silent and featureless chasm that existed before anything else. To the north of this abyss lay Niflheim, a realm of primordial ice, mist, and biting cold. To the south was Muspelheim, a world of searing, unbearable fire, home to the fire giants and guarded by the mighty giant Surt with his flaming sword. For ages, these two opposing forces existed in separation, but slowly, the heat from Muspelheim began to radiate across the void, reaching out to touch the frozen wastes of Niflheim. Where the fiery winds met the icy rimes, a thaw began. The melting droplets infused with this life-giving heat coalesced and quickened, forming into the first living being. This was Ymir, the primeval giant, a hermaphroditic entity of immense power and chaos, from whose sweat the first frost giants were born. As Ymir rested, another form emerged from the melting ice. This was Audhumla, a great and gentle primeval cow. She provided nourishment for Ymir from her 4 rivers of milk, but she too was driven by a deep, creative instinct. With no other sustenance available, she began to lick the salty, life-infused ice blocks around her. On the first day of her licking, a man's hair emerged from the ice. On the second day, his entire head was revealed, and on the third day, a whole, powerful man sprang forth from the block. This was Beri, the first of the Aesir gods, the progenitor of the divine race that would one day challenge the rule of the giants. Beri had a son named Bor, who in turn married a giantess named Bisla, and together they had 3 sons, Odin, who would become the All-Father, Vili, representing will, and Ve, representing holiness or sanctity. These 3 brothers looked upon the chaotic, giant-dominated cosmos and saw a need for order. They rose up against the source of that chaos, the great progenitor Ymir himself. In a fierce and bloody battle, they slew the first being. The cascade of blood from Ymir's wounds was so colossal that it drowned nearly all of the other frost giants, save one couple who escaped in a boat made from a hollowed-out tree trunk, thus ensuring the eternal enmity between gods and giants would continue. With the giant defeated, the brothers set about the gruesome but creative task of building a new world from his remains. They dragged his massive body into the center of Ginnungagap and began to fashion the cosmos. Ymir's flesh was molded into the earth itself. His blood and sweat became all the seas and oceans. His unbreakable bones were piled high to form the mountains and cliffs. His teeth and smaller bone fragments were scattered to become stones and pebbles. They took his skull and hoisted it high above, creating the dome of the sky, which they then held aloft by placing a dwarf at each of its 4 corners: Nordri, Sudri, Austri, and Vestri, whose names forever after would give us the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. This act of creation from destruction is the absolute core of the Norse worldview. It reflects a profound understanding of the cyclical nature of existence, where life, death, and new life are an endless, interconnected loop. Nothing is truly wasted. Even in violent ends, there is the material for beautiful beginnings. This resonates deeply with the Viking ethos of making one's fate through brave action, even in the face of certain doom, for even doom could have purpose. This fatalism, known as the doctrine of the inevitable Ragnarok, where even the gods would fall in a final battle, is not a sad ending but a necessary one, promising renewal and a new world to emerge from the ashes of the old. This mythology was not confined to abstract stories. It was mapped directly onto the world the Norse people saw around them and the sky above them. The Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost, said to connect the realm of humans, Midgard, with the realm of the gods, Asgard, was likely inspired by the breathtaking spectacle of the aurora borealis dancing across the northern night sky. The world tree, Yggdrasil, an immense ash whose branches hold the 9 realms, provided a cosmological model that organized their understanding of the universe. These tales, preserved in the Icelandic texts known as the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda, offer a raw and gritty perspective on creation. There is no supreme, benevolent architect here. Instead, the cosmos is a product of conflict, a hard-won structure built from the body of a vanquished foe, constantly under threat and maintained only through strength, wisdom, and courage. It is a powerful reminder of the incredible diversity of human thought, showing how different environments and cultures can give rise to radically different, yet equally profound, answers to the greatest question of all. While many ancient cultures envisioned a singular, definitive moment of creation, Hindu cosmology presents a breathtakingly different perspective, one where the universe breathes in an endless, rhythmic dance of existence. This is not a story with a clear beginning or a final end, but a grand, cyclical process of manifestation, sustenance, and dissolution that repeats across time scales so vast they defy human imagination. At the heart of this system is the triumvirate of divine functions personified by the Trimurti: Brahma, the generator who brings the universe into being; Vishnu, the operator who preserves and maintains its order; and Shiva, the destroyer who dissolves it back into its unmanifest state to make way for the next cycle of renewal. This continuous loop of creation, preservation, and dissolution is known as a kalpa, a single day in the life of Brahma, which itself lasts for 4.32 billion years. And just as his day ends, a night of equal length follows, a period of partial dissolution. The sheer scale is humbling, suggesting a cosmos of such immense age and cycles that it echoes the modern scientific understanding of a universe billions of years old, undergoing its own processes of stellar birth and death. These immense cycles are further subdivided into 4 great ages, or yugas, each with its own distinct spiritual and moral character. We begin with the Satya Yuga, a golden age of truth and righteousness where humanity lives in perfect harmony with divine law, followed by the Treta Yuga, where virtue slightly declines but ritual and sacrifice maintain order. Next comes the Dvapara Yuga, an age of even further decline where disease and conflict arise. And finally, we arrive at the Kali Yuga, the age we currently inhabit, an era characterized by strife, ignorance, and a profound disconnect from spiritual wisdom. According to these ancient calculations, this dark age began over 5,000 years ago and will last for 432,000 years, a period where humanity must work hardest to remember its divine nature amidst the chaos. This framework is not meant to inspire despair, but to provide a realistic map of cosmic and human history, helping us understand our place within a much larger, repeating pattern of ascent and descent. It's a profoundly sophisticated model of time that is both descriptive and prescriptive, offering a lens through which to view both the grandeur of the cosmos and the challenges of our daily lives. Underpinning this entire cosmology is the profound philosophical concept of Maya, the powerful illusion that the physical world we perceive with our senses is the ultimate reality. Hindu seers taught that this universe of names and forms is a kind of divine projection, a magnificent but temporary play emanating from Brahman, the infinite, unchanging, and formless ground of all existence. Think of it as an ocean. Brahman is the deep, still, limitless water itself, while the universe with its galaxies, stars, and living beings are the waves upon its surface, temporary, ever-changing manifestations that are never separate from the ocean, even though they appear to have their own independent existence. This is not to say the world is unimportant or fake. Rather, it is a relative reality, a dynamic expression of the absolute. The goal of human life, then, becomes to see through the veil of Maya, to recognize the divine consciousness Brahman, pervading and underpinning all of creation, and thus to achieve liberation from the cycle of rebirth. This incredibly sophisticated and abstract thinking did not remain confined to philosophy. It directly fueled groundbreaking advances in mathematics and astronomy. The need to calculate these immense cosmic cycles with precision led ancient Indian mathematicians to develop the decimal number system, including the revolutionary concept of zero as a placeholder and a number in its own right, a fundamental pillar of all modern mathematics and science. Astronomers like Aryabhatta and Brahmagupta, working in the 5th and 7th centuries respectively, proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system long before it was accepted in the West, calculated the circumference of the Earth with remarkable accuracy, and developed complex algebraic theories to predict planetary motions and eclipses. Their work was not a separate scientific pursuit divorced from spirituality. It was a sacred science, a form of worship through which they sought to map and understand the magnificent, cyclical workings of the divine mind. This seamless integration of profound metaphysical inquiry with rigorous empirical observation reveals a culture that understood time not as a linear arrow but as a spiral, a sacred, eternal rhythm in which we are all participating, moment by moment, age by age. After the gods formed the earth and sky from the primordial sea, they found themselves surrounded by a profound silence, a world beautiful and ordered, yet devoid of voices to praise its creation. This longing for reciprocity, for a being that could acknowledge and worship them, sets the stage for one of the most fascinating and iterative creation narratives ever conceived. The Mayan epic, the Popol Vuh, details this process not as a single act of divine will, but as a series of creative experiments, each one teaching the gods something new about what it means to embody consciousness. Their first attempt was the animals, the birds of the air, the jaguars of the forest, the creatures of the rivers. But while these beings could move and make sound, they could only screech, squawk, and roar. They could not speak the names of the gods, could not offer prayers or maintain the cycles of worship needed to sustain the cosmos. Seeing this failure, the creators declared that the animals would forever remain subordinate, their purpose being to be eaten and sacrificed by the beings that would eventually come next. Not to be deterred, the gods decided to try again, this time crafting a form from the very earth itself. They fashioned beings out of mud. These figures could at first hold a shape and even speak, but they were weak and unstable. They dissolved in the rain, their faces were lopsided and blurred, and they spoke nonsense without true understanding. They could not remember their creators from one moment to the next. The gods looked upon these crumbling, incoherent creatures and saw another failure. They let them wash away, deciding that this was not the right material for a being of heart and mind. It was only after consultation with wise diviners and a period of deep reflection that they discovered the perfect substance, maize. Yellow and white corn was ground into a fine meal, mixed with water to form a dough, and from this sacred paste the first 4 true humans were shaped. These were the ancestors of all the Quiche Maya people, Balam Quitsi, Balam Akab, Mahukuta, and Ikwi Balam. This choice of material was not random. It was the deepest possible expression of a core Mayan belief. Maize was not just a crop, it was the literal substance of life. The Mayans understood themselves as people of corn, their physical bodies sustained by it, and according to their origin story, literally made from it. This created a sacred bond of reciprocity. Just as humans needed maize to live, the gods had needed maize to create humanity. And just as humans nurtured the cornfields, they were expected to nurture their relationship with the gods through prayer, ceremony, and sacrifice. This was a covenant written not on stone, but in the very flesh of their being, a constant reminder that their existence was a gift that required gratitude and participation in return. This intricate mythology was not separate from the Mayans' breathtaking scientific achievements. It was the very engine that drove them. Their desire to understand the cycles of the gods and their place within the cosmic order led them to become arguably the most sophisticated astronomers of the ancient world. They developed a complex system of interlocking calendars that tracked time with astonishing precision. The Tzolk'in was a 260-day sacred round used for divination and ritual timing. The Hob was a 365-day solar calendar for agricultural and civil purposes, but most impressive was the Long Count, a linear calendar that measured vast epochs of time, allowing them to calculate dates thousands of years in the past or future. They used this system to predict celestial events with remarkable accuracy, particularly the cycles of Venus, which they associated with the god Kukulkan and viewed as a harbinger of both war and fortune. A solar eclipse wasn't just an event. It was a moment of potential cosmic imbalance, a time when the sun god was threatened, and their precise predictions allowed them to perform the necessary rituals to ensure his victorious return. This celestial knowledge was literally set in stone. Their architecture served as massive astronomical instruments. The Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itzá is famous for the serpent of shadow that slithers down its steps during the equinoxes, a dazzling display of light and architecture that connects the earth to the sky. The observatory at Chichen Itzá, known as El Caracol for its unique spiral interior, is a testament to their precision. Its windows and sightlines are carefully aligned with the extreme positions of Venus on the horizon, as well as the summer solstice sunset and other key celestial events. This was a building designed for one purpose: to watch the gods moving through the heavens and to mark their passage with unerring accuracy. Their view of the cosmos itself was a multi-layered universe, a great sacred tree with its roots in the 9 layers of the underworld, Xibalba, a place of fear and trial, and its branches reaching up through the 13 layers of the upper world, each level home to different deities and celestial phenomena. Human life was suspended in the middle, in the earthly realm. Every action, from the planting of a corn seed to the sacrifice of a king, was seen as having reverberations throughout these layers. A successful ritual could nourish the gods and maintain the cosmic order, while negligence could bring drought, disease, and chaos. This was a worldview of profound connection and consequence, where myth, science, and spirituality were not separate disciplines but threads in a single, magnificent tapestry, woven together by a people who saw the rhythm of the cosmos in the growth of a cornstalk and the journey of a star. From the cosmic covenant of Maize in the Mayan world, we journey now to an ancient Chinese vision of creation that begins, like so many others, with an egg, but this one holds not a serene unfolding of potential, but a solitary Herculean labor of cosmic proportions. Within a formless, swirling chaos that existed before time, a single, perfectly formed egg came into being, holding within its shell the entire potential of the universe and a slumbering giant named Pangu. For 18,000 years he slept and grew within this confined space until the day he finally awoke, stretched his immense limbs, and shattered the shell that had contained him. The lighter, purer energies, the yang, floated upward to form the heavens, while the heavier, murkier energies, the yin, sank down to coalesce into the earth. But fearing that these two realms would collapse back into each other and return everything to chaos, Pangu placed himself between them, his head holding up the sky and his feet planted firmly on the earth. And here he began his great work, pushing them further apart each day for another 18,000 years, growing 10 feet taller with every passing day, ensuring the sky rose higher and the earth grew thicker and more solid beneath him. When his monumental task was finally complete and the separation was permanent, the exhausted giant could rest, but his work was not yet finished, even in death. As his life left him, his very body underwent a final, magnificent transformation, becoming the physical world itself. His breath sighed out to become the winds and clouds that drift across the sky. His voice rumbled out one last time to become the thunder that echoes through mountain valleys. His left eye, bright and radiant, rose into the heavens to become the sun, bringing warmth and day, while his right eye, softer and more gentle, became the moon to illuminate the night. The rivers and waterways that carved through the landscape were formed from his lifeblood. His veins became the paths and roads, and his muscles transformed into the fertile soil that nourishes all life. His hair and beard scattered to become the stars glittering in the Milky Way, and the fleas that had lived on his skin were carried by the wind to become the human race. This is an etiological myth of the most profound kind, a story that doesn't just explain how the world was made, but literally maps the features of the landscape onto the body of a divine being, making the entire earth a sacred relic and a memorial to a foundational act of sacrifice. This powerful narrative is far more than a simple origin story. It is a perfect embodiment of the core Taoist principle of yin and yang. The entire cosmos, according to this view, is a dynamic interplay between these two complementary forces. Yin represents the earth, darkness, passivity, and receptivity, while yang represents the heavens, light, activity, and creativity. Pangu's act of separating them was the first and most essential act, establishing the fundamental duality that allows for all existence and change. Yet, the myth also beautifully illustrates that these opposites are not at war. They are two parts of a whole, originally contained within the same egg and held in balance by the giant's body. This philosophy of harmonious balance would go on to permeate virtually every aspect of Chinese culture, from the martial art of Tai Chi, which is a physical meditation on the flow of these energies, to traditional medicine, which seeks to balance yin and yang within the human body to maintain health and prevent disease. This cosmic worldview was mirrored by an astonishingly advanced tradition of astronomy. Chinese star maps from as early as the Tang dynasty are incredibly detailed, documenting over 1,300 stars and recognizing patterns that were completely unknown in the West. They maintained meticulous court records of celestial events, viewing them as direct communications from heaven about the state of the empire. In the year 1054, court astronomers recorded the sudden appearance of a guest star in the constellation we now call Taurus. This was the supernova that created the Crab Nebula, an event observed and documented nowhere else in the world with such precision. These astronomical observations were deeply interpreted through both imperial and philosophical lenses. A comet was not just a rock of ice flying through space. It was a broom star, sweeping across the heavens to signify that the emperor needed to sweep away corruption and misrule from his court. The orderly movement of the planets was a reflection of the cosmic harmony the emperor was duty-bound to maintain on Earth. The legend of Pangu itself became a foundational pillar of Chinese cultural identity, its influence extending far beyond temple walls. You can see his story depicted in ancient Han Dynasty tomb carvings and in vibrant folk art, celebrating him as the ultimate ancestor and creator. His struggle to bring order from chaos provided a powerful metaphor for human endeavor and the civilizing process. This influence deeply informs the practice of Feng Shui, the art of placement. At its heart, Feng Shui is about arranging your environment, from the placement of a bed to the orientation of an entire city, to harmonize with the natural flow of Kai, the vital life force. This practice directly echoes Pangu's act of separating yin and yang. It is about creating a balanced, ordered space from potential chaos, ensuring that the heavenly and earthly energies are in proper alignment to promote health, prosperity, and peace. The story of the giant who became the world is a timeless reminder that our myths are not just about how the world was made, but about how we choose to live within it, striving always for that perfect, harmonious balance. From the orderly, maze-based creation of the Mayans and the balanced duality of Pangu's sacrifice, we now turn to a narrative where the universe is born not from a single act, but from a sprawling, often violent family saga. The ancient Greeks bequeathed to us a creation story that is less about the crafting of physical matter and more about the tumultuous establishment of power and order among the gods themselves. Our most complete account comes from the poet Hesiod, who, in his epic work The Theogony, lays out a detailed genealogy of the divine, a complex family tree whose roots are buried deep in the void of nothingness. He begins his story not with a god, but with an abstract concept, chaos. This wasn't chaos in the modern sense of mere disorder, but rather a gaping, yawning chasm of nothingness, the first thing to come into existence. From this void emerged the foundational pillars of the cosmos: Gaia, the solid and life-giving earth; Tartarus, the deep, dank pit of the underworld; and Eros, the powerful force of attraction and love, the necessary catalyst that would drive all subsequent creation and reproduction. Gaia, now solid and alone, performed the first act of generation without a partner, giving birth to Uranus, the starry sky, who would become her equal and her mate. She also bore the towering mountain ranges and the restless sea, Pontus. Her union with Uranus then produced the first great pantheon of beings, the 12 mighty Titans, 3 monstrous hecatoncheires or 100-handed giants, and 3 powerful cyclopes. But this was not a happy family. Uranus, horrified by the sight of his monstrous children, hated them immediately, and as each was born, he forced them back into the womb of Gaia, imprisoning them deep within her, causing her immense pain and anguish. This cruel act set the stage for a brutal cycle of rebellion that would define the Greek cosmic order. Grieving and enraged, Gaia conspired with her youngest Titan son, Cronus. She fashioned a great adamantine sickle and hid Cronus in ambush. When Uranus came to lie with Gaia that night, Cronus leaped out, seized his father, and with one swift, vicious motion, castrated him, severing his power and his claim to rule. This act of patricide was the pivotal moment that released the Titans and ushered in their age of rule, with Cronus taking the throne. But the cycle of violence was destined to repeat itself. Paranoid that he would suffer the same fate as his father, Cronus devoured each of his own children as they were born to him by his sister wife, the Titaness Re. Heartbroken, Re finally managed to save her youngest son, Zeus, by tricking Cronus into swallowing a stone wrapped in swaddling clothes. The hidden Zeus was raised in secret on Crete, and upon reaching maturity, returned to force his father to disgorge his siblings. What followed was a cataclysmic war, the Titanomachy, with Zeus and his freed brothers and sisters fighting from Mount Olympus against Cronus and the older Titans from Mount Athres. This decade-long conflict, which shook the very foundations of the cosmos, was finally won by Zeus with the help of the very monsters his grandfather had feared, the Cyclopes, who forged his mighty thunderbolts, and the hundred-handed giants who pelted the Titans with massive rocks. With victory secured, Zeus and his siblings drew lots to divide the universe. Zeus won the sky and became king of the gods, Poseidon took the seas, and Hades was given the underworld. This entire genealogical narrative was far more than just a thrilling epic. It was a divine mirror held up to Greek society. The establishment of Zeus's rule on Olympus, presiding over a council of gods with clearly defined roles and domains, directly reflected the human political structures of city-states and kingship. It presented a universe where order, however brutally won, was paramount, and where the ultimate authority was not just about raw power, as it was with Uranus and Cronus, but about justice, law, and a certain level of diplomacy embodied by Zeus. This shift from raw, primal power to a more structured, if still imperfect, governance offered a model for human civilization itself, justifying social hierarchy and the rule of law as a natural, cosmic principle. Yet, even as these myths flourished, a new way of thinking was beginning to emerge from the same fertile Greek soil. In the city of Miletus, philosophers like Thales and Anaximander started to ask different kinds of questions about the origins of the world. Thales proposed that the fundamental substance, the arche or first principle of everything, was water. Anaximander, his student, went further, suggesting it was something even more abstract, the apeiron, or the boundless, infinite, and indefinite, a concept not entirely unlike Hesiod's chaos. These were not stories about gods giving birth to other gods. These were attempts to find a single, underlying, natural cause for all existence, to explain the diversity of the world through observation and reason rather than divine narrative. This represents a monumental intellectual bridge, a crucial pivot point in human history where the poetic and the proto-scientific began to coexist and at times compete as ways of understanding the universe. The Greeks, however, never fully abandoned their love for a good story. They took their rich tapestry of myths and projected it directly onto the canvas of the night sky, creating a celestial storybook that anyone could read. The constellation Orion was immortalized as the great hunter, placed among the stars by Zeus, forever pursuing the Pleiades sisters. The vain queen Cassiopeia was chained to her heavenly throne, circling the pole for eternity as a lesson in humility. The hero Perseus holding the head of the Gorgon Medusa, and the great bear Callisto transformed by a jealous Hera, all these figures and more were woven into the stars. This practice of mapping myths onto constellations served multiple purposes. It was a mnemonic device for navigation, a way to mark the changing seasons for agriculture, and a powerful method of cultural storytelling that embedded their divine dramas into the very fabric of the heavens. This beautiful synthesis of imaginative myth and observational astronomy perfectly captures the Greek spirit, a relentless, evolving quest to understand creation through both the heart of a poet and the inquisitive mind of a philosopher. High in the thin, crisp air of the Andes, where the sky feels close enough to touch, the Inca civilization forged an empire and a creation story deeply intertwined with the very landscape they inhabited. Their vision of the beginning centers on the majestic Lake Titicaca, the highest navigable lake in the world, a vast, deep blue expanse that seemed to them a direct portal to the divine. From its sacred waters, the creator god Viracocha, also known as Viracocha, or the foam of the sea, emerged into a world shrouded in primordial darkness. His first act was to bring forth light, commanding the sun, moon, and stars to rise into the heavens and illuminate the barren earth. With the stage set, he began his work of creation, fashioning the first race of human beings not from flesh or dust, but from stone, sculpting giant figures and imbuing them with life. Yet this first attempt was ultimately a failure. These stone giants were powerful but flawed. They lacked purpose, wandered without direction, and failed to honor their creator. Disappointed, Viracocha made a cataclysmic decision. He unleashed a great flood upon the world, washing away his imperfect creations and leaving the slate clean for a new beginning. This theme of trial and error is a profound and surprisingly relatable aspect of the myth. It presents creation not as a single, flawless event dictated by an infallible will, but as an iterative process, a divine experiment where the Creator himself learns and adapts. From the clay that remained after the waters receded, Viracocha carefully fashioned a new, improved humanity. To these clay figures, he gave the most precious gifts of all: the breath of life, distinct languages to speak, knowledge of agriculture to sustain themselves, intricate customs to bind their communities, and the arts of civilization to allow them to thrive. He did not simply create them and abandon them, he equipped them for survival and success. His work, however, was still not complete. Viracocha then embarked on an epic journey across the rugged terrain of the Andes, often disguised as a humble old man in simple robes. He traveled from village to village, teaching the people he encountered the principles of morality, the techniques of farming, and the proper ways to worship. Along the way, he performed miracles to demonstrate his divine power, healing the sick and even raising the dead. This period of wandering and instruction is central to the myth, establishing Viracocha not as a distant, detached deity, but as an immanent, personal God deeply involved in the daily lives of his people, concerned with their well-being and their moral development. His journey culminated on the coast of Ecuador, where he did not die but walked purposefully across the surface of the Pacific Ocean, disappearing into the western horizon with a promise that one day, in a time of great need, he would return. This powerful narrative, as we know it today, was recorded by Spanish chroniclers like Juan de Betanzos and Pedro Sarmiento de Gamboa after the conquest. While we must read their accounts with an understanding of their own cultural and religious biases, they provide an invaluable window into the Inca worldview. The promise of return, in particular, would later have devastating consequences, as the Inca Emperor Atahualpa was initially mistaken for Viracocha by some when the Spanish conquistadors, arriving from the sea, first made contact. This rich mythology was not an abstract belief system. It was the very bedrock of the Inca state's immense power and organization. The Sapa Inca, the emperor, was believed to be a direct descendant of the sun god Inti, who was himself a creation of Viracocha. This made the emperor the living representative of cosmic authority on earth, the divine intermediary between the people and the creator. His right to rule was absolute because it was ordained by the very God who fashioned the world. This theological framework justified the Incas' rapid expansion, as conquering new peoples was seen as bringing them into Viracocha's ordained order. The entire vast empire, connected by its incredible network of roads, was under the sway of a creation story that centralized all political and spiritual authority in the person of the emperor. This celestial authority was mirrored and measured by the Incas' sophisticated understanding of the heavens. Their astronomy was a practical and sacred science, seamlessly integrated into their architecture. The Coricancha, or Golden Enclosure, the most important temple in the capital of Cusco, was not just a place of worship but a precision observatory. Its walls were lined with gold to reflect the sun's light, and its windows and pillars were meticulously aligned to capture the first rays of the sun during the June solstice, marking the sacred Inti Raymi festival that celebrated the sun's return and the start of a new agricultural cycle. They also closely tracked the movements of the Pleiades star cluster. The clarity and brightness of these stars when they reappeared in the sky were believed to predict the health of the upcoming harvest, directly informing agricultural planning across the empire. By observing the heavens, the Inca priests were not just studying the stars, they were communing with Viracocha's creation, reading his divine will, and using that knowledge to regulate the rhythms of life for millions of people, from when to plant potatoes to when to honor the gods. This intricate dance between myth, astronomy, and political power reveals a civilization that saw no separation between the cosmic order and the social order, viewing both as a single, divine tapestry woven by the Creator who emerged from the lake. While the Incas looked to Lake Titicaca for their divine creator and the Greeks envisioned gods clashing on Mount Olympus, a remarkable narrative from the Bandiagara escarpment in Mali presents a creation story that reaches beyond our world into the depths of interstellar space. The Dogon people have preserved for centuries an intricate cosmology that centers not on a god emerging from earthly waters, but on celestial beings arriving from the brightest star in our night sky. According to their oral traditions, the universe was created by a single supreme god, Amma, but the task of organizing the world and civilizing humanity fell to a group of amphibious, fish-like entities known as the Namo. These beings, described as the children of Amma and the guardians of creation, are said to have journeyed to Earth from the star system Sirius, arriving in a great arc that spiraled down from the heavens, bringing with them the essential knowledge needed to forge a society. What makes the Dogon account so extraordinary and the subject of intense debate for decades is the precise and advanced astronomical knowledge embedded within their mythology. They describe Sirius, which they call Sigi Tolo, not as a single star but as part of a complex system. Most stunningly, they speak of a small, incredibly dense and heavy companion star that orbits Sirius every 50 years. They refer to this invisible companion as Po Tolo Tolo, meaning star, and Po referring to a tiny, fundamental grain, the smallest thing they knew, the seed of the fonio grain. This is a perfect description of Sirius B, a white dwarf star that is so faint it is completely invisible to the naked eye and requires a powerful telescope to observe. Western astronomers only confirmed its existence in 1862 and calculated its 50.1-year orbit much later. Yet, the Dogon reportedly knew of its existence, its density, and its orbital period long before this modern discovery. This profound anomaly has sparked a wide spectrum of theories attempting to explain how an indigenous culture could possess such specific knowledge. One compelling possibility, championed by some anthropologists, is that the Dogon developed their own sophisticated, long-term astronomical observation techniques. Their priests, who are the custodians of this sacred knowledge, may have meticulously tracked the subtle wobble in the path of the bright Sirius across the sky over generations. The gravitational influence of an unseen massive object would cause just such a perturbation, and through patient, dedicated observation, they could have deduced the presence, mass, and orbital period of its hidden companion, encoding this discovery into their mythological framework. This view credits the Dogon with remarkable indigenous scientific achievement, a testament to the power of oral tradition and dedicated observation. An alternative and more controversial explanation is the ancient astronaut theory, which suggests the Dogon's knowledge came from direct contact with an advanced extraterrestrial civilization, perhaps even the Namo themselves. Proponents of this view argue that the description of the Namo's arc spiraling through the air and their amphibious nature could be interpreted as a cultural memory of an alien visitation. In this reading, the Nama were not mythological symbols but literal extraterrestrial teachers who imparted advanced knowledge about their home star system. This theory, while popular in certain circles, is heavily criticized by mainstream scholars who point to a lack of concrete evidence and the potential for cultural misinterpretation. A more grounded skeptical argument suggests the possibility of cultural contamination. French anthropologists Marcel Griaule and Germain Dieterlen studied the Dogon intensively in the 1930s and 40s and were the ones who brought their astronomical beliefs to the Western world. Skeptics note that by the time this research was conducted, knowledge of Sirius B had been published in Europe for decades. It is possible, though strongly denied by Griaule and Dieterlen's supporters, that this modern astronomical information was inadvertently introduced to the Dogon by missionaries, traders, or even earlier explorers, and was then incorporated into their existing myths, creating a fascinating but ultimately modern syncretism. Regardless of its origin, the knowledge is deeply woven into the fabric of Dogon's spiritual and daily life. The Namo are revered as more than just visitors. They are seen as the fundamental life force, the creators of water and the bringers of order. They are credited with teaching humanity agriculture, weaving, metalwork, and the complex social structures that define Dogon society. Their cosmology reflects a complex understanding of cyclic time and celestial mechanics, all expressed through beautiful and intricate rituals, masks, and sand drawings used in their ceremonies. The Sigwi ceremony, held only once every 60 years to mark the renewal of the world, is directly linked to the orbital cycle of Sirius. This integration shows that for the Dogon, astronomy is not a separate science but an inseparable part of their religion, art, and identity. The enduring mystery of the Dogon and Sirius B ultimately forces us to confront our own assumptions about history, knowledge, and the capabilities of ancient cultures. Whether the product of indigenous genius, a misunderstood cultural exchange, or something even more extraordinary, their story stands as a powerful example of how a creation myth can serve as a vessel for profound and precise information about the universe. It challenges the notion that scientific insight is the sole province of the modern, technological world, and suggests that the human desire to understand the cosmos and our place within it can express itself in ways that beautifully blur the line between celestial myth and celestial science. But this powerful vision of a clear-cut battle between light and darkness was not the only perspective to emerge from ancient Persia. A more enigmatic and philosophically daring variant known as Zurvanism presented a radically different starting point for this cosmic struggle. In this school of thought, the ultimate origin was not the benevolent Ahura Mazda, but a far more abstract and neutral primordial force, Zurvan Akarana, which translates to infinite or boundless time. This was not a god in a human-like sense, but the very personification of time itself, an endless, impersonal, and all-encompassing entity that existed before all else. The Zurvanite myth describes this infinite time yearning for a son, and through a moment of doubt or perhaps simply the inevitable unfolding of its own nature, it gave birth to twins. From this single, paradoxical source emerged both Ahura Mazda, the embodiment of light, wisdom, and goodness, and his eternal adversary, Angra Mainyu, the spirit of darkness, destruction, and evil. This immediately establishes a universe where the fundamental conflict between good and evil is not an accident or an invasion, but is woven into the very fabric of existence from the very first moment of differentiation. This concept of creation as an emanation from time itself is a breathtakingly sophisticated and unique contribution to religious thought. It shifts the question of origins from who created to what was the condition from which creation arose. Zervan, as infinite time, is the ultimate ground of being, the stage upon which the drama of cosmic duality plays out. This perspective had a profound and lasting influence far beyond the borders of Persia. Its echoes can be clearly heard in the later Gnostic traditions of the Hellenistic world, which often spoke of a remote, unknowable supreme god and a flawed demiurge who accidentally created the material world. The entire Manichaean religion, founded by the prophet Mani in the 3rd century, built its complex cosmology on a stark dualism between the realms of light and darkness, a concept very likely refined through contact with Zervanite ideas. This stream of thought presented a more complex and arguably more tragic vision of the universe, where evil is not a later corruption but a co-eternal, fundamental principle born from the same root as good. It is crucial to understand that Zervanism was likely always a theological elaboration popular among priests and intellectuals, rather than the mainstream belief of the common people. The core of Zoroastrianism, as revealed in the sacred texts of the Avesta, remains firmly focused on Ahura Mazda as the uncreated creator of all that is good. In this more widespread view, the universe was initially fashioned as a perfect spiritual creation. Angra Mainyu, a wholly separate and destructive spirit, chose to attack and corrupt this perfect world, introducing death, disease, and deceit. This corruption is the source of the struggle we experience, but it is not a permanent state. Zoroastrian cosmology is ultimately optimistic and eschatological. It looks forward to a final renovation of the world, a frashocraty, when evil will be utterly defeated and the universe will be restored to its original, perfect state. This ultimate purification is not achieved by divine fiat alone, but through the active participation of humanity. Humans endowed with free will are the soldiers in this cosmic battle. Every thought, word, and deed that aligns with a shared cosmic truth and order strengthens the forces of good. Every choice that aligns with drudge, the lie, and chaos strengthens the forces of evil. This places an immense ethical responsibility on every individual, making daily life a continuous act of cosmic significance. This profound moral framework was intimately connected to the celestial realm above. The Zoroastrians were keen astrologers and astronomers, and they saw their spiritual battles mirrored in the movements of the heavens. The star Tishtria, which we know as Sirius, was venerated as a divine warrior. An entire hymn in the Avesta, the Tishtria Yasht, is dedicated to this celestial entity and describes its epic battle against the drought-bringing demon Apausha. For 3 days and nights, Tishtria, in the form of a brilliant white horse, is said to clash with Apausha, who appears as a black horse. Tishtria is initially defeated, but after receiving increased worship from humanity, he gathers his strength and triumphs, bringing the life-giving rains that save the harvest. This was not mere poetry. The heliacal rising of Sirius coincided with the rainy season in Persia, so this myth directly linked the spiritual victory of light over darkness to a tangible, annual environmental event that was crucial for survival. The sky was a constant, visible reminder of the ongoing cosmic struggle and the critical role human faith and action played in its outcome. The influence of these Zoroastrian ideas, both mainstream and Zervanite, on the development of Western thought cannot be overstated. During the Babylonian exile, Jewish thinkers came into direct contact with Persian cosmology. Concepts of a powerful evil adversary, a figure like Satan, who evolves from a mere prosecutor in the heavenly court in earlier texts to a truly malevolent tempter, bear a strong resemblance to Angra Mainyu. The sharply dualistic worldview of the Dead Sea Scrolls community, the Qumran Essenes, who saw the world divided between the sons of light and the sons of darkness, shows clear parallels. The entire architecture of an apocalyptic end times, a final judgment and a resurrection of the dead, which became central to Christianity and Islam, finds some of its earliest and most detailed expressions in Zoroastrianism. Even Greek philosophy was touched by these ideas. The Platonic concept of a world of perfect forms and a flawed material world may well have been influenced by Persian dualism. This intellectual exchange highlights Persia not as a remote Eastern empire, but as a central crucible of ideas that would fundamentally shape the religious and philosophical landscape of Europe and the Middle East for millennia. The enduring power of these myths lies in their ability to give profound expression to a universal human experience, the palpable sense of being caught in a struggle between our higher aspirations and our baser instincts, and the deeply held belief that our choices in that struggle matter on a cosmic scale. After exploring the sophisticated dualisms of Persia, we now set sail across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, to a world where creation is not a singular event but an ongoing, rhythmic process of genealogy and connection. Here, among the scattered islands of Polynesia, the universe is understood not through cosmic battles or divine sacrifices, but through the sacred, rhythmic cadence of the chant. These are not simply stories, they are living genealogies known as Cumulipo in Hawaii or similar names across the archipelago that weave together the very fabric of existence, binding every rock, creature, and human into a single, immense family. The most famous of these, the Hawaiian Cumulipo, is a 2,000-line epic that begins not with light, but with a deep, generative darkness called Po. From this profound night, life begins to emerge in a carefully ordered sequence, starting with the simplest marine life like coral and seaweed, then moving to fish, to land plants, to insects, birds, and finally to humans. This is a creation narrative that mirrors the scientific theory of evolution in its structure, suggesting an ancient, observant understanding of life's interconnected development. Each new form is not invented from nothing, but is born from what came before, a new branch on an ever-growing family tree that links the tiniest sea urchin directly to the highest chief. Central to this genealogical world is the primordial couple found in countless Polynesian traditions, Papa, the Earth Mother, and Wakia, the Sky Father. Their story is one of both union and necessary separation. In their passionate embrace, the world was created, but for life to flourish in the space between, they had to be parted. This separation, often achieved by their children who represent various forces of nature, established the fundamental structure of the cosmos, the sky above, the earth below, and the breathable atmosphere in between. From their union also came the islands themselves. In Hawaiian tradition, the Hawaiian archipelago is the direct offspring of Papa and Wakia. Their firstborn was a child form of the island of Hawaii itself. This means the land is not merely a place where people live, it is literally their eldest sibling. This profound kinship creates an unbreakable bond of responsibility, a familial duty to care for the land as one would care for a family member. This relationship is encapsulated in the concept of kulina, a word that means both privilege and responsibility, defining a person's rightful place and duty within their family and their environment. This deep, intimate knowledge of the natural world was absolutely essential for survival on the world's largest ocean. The Polynesians were the greatest navigators in human history, undertaking voyages of thousands of miles across open sea in double-hulled canoes with no modern instruments. Their ability to do this relied on a masterful, celestial science passed down through chance and practical apprenticeship. They developed star compasses, mental maps of the night sky that divided the horizon into 32 houses, each marked by the rising and setting points of key stars. A navigator would memorize the star that rose over their destination island and then sail steadfastly toward that point on the horizon, even when that star was not visible. Their knowledge extended beyond stars to the subtle patterns of ocean swells, the flight paths of certain birds that indicated land was near, and the color and composition of clouds. The mythologies of these stars were woven directly into their creation chants. The Pleiades star cluster, known as Makale in Hawaii, was particularly significant. Its annual heliacal rising in November marked the start of the 4-month Makahiki season, a time of peace, games, and harvest festivals dedicated to the god Lono. Its setting signaled the time to begin planting. The heavens were not a separate spiritual realm. They were a practical, functional calendar and a navigational chart deeply embedded in the cycle of daily life. Therefore, these chants were far more than spiritual or historical records. They were the foundational databases of Polynesian civilization, encoding everything from land boundaries and resource management right to moral codes and navigational secrets. To recite one's genealogy was to assert one's identity, one's rights to use certain fishing grounds or farm certain plots of land, and one's connection to the divine. The rhythm of the chant itself was a mnemonic device, a way to lock vast amounts of crucial information into memory for accurate transmission across generations without a written language. This oral tradition was a matter of life and death. Knowing which fish was in season, which plant was medicinal, how to predict a storm by reading the sky, or how to find a distant island, all this vital intelligence was preserved within these poetic lines. The community's survival depended on the flawless preservation of this knowledge, making the chanters and navigators among the most revered members of society. In today's world, facing unprecedented ecological challenges, this Polynesian worldview offers a powerful and resonant model of sustainability. It presents a philosophy where humans are not masters over nature, but younger siblings within a vast living family. This perspective inherently fosters respect and reciprocity. You do not exploit a family member, you care for them, understanding that your own well-being is inextricably linked to theirs. The modern environmental movement often struggles to motivate change through abstract concepts of saving the planet. The Polynesian model, by contrast, grounds the imperative to care for our environment in the deeply human concepts of family and genealogy. It teaches that sustainability is not a technical problem to be solved, but a relationship to be nurtured, a sacred duty, a kulina, to honor our eldest siblings, the land, the sea, and the sky. Listening to the echoes of these chants today, we hear an invitation to remember our own place within a living cosmos, to see the world not as a collection of resources to be managed, but as a web of kin to be cherished. In a universe of ideas dominated by gods who shape worlds from their will or their flesh, Jainism presents a breathtakingly different vision, one where no supreme architect calls the shots. This ancient Indian tradition, which arose around the same time as Buddhism, proposes a cosmos that is entirely self-sustaining, operating on eternal, natural laws without any need for a divine creator. Here, the universe is not a creation but a fundamental, uncreated reality, an infinite tapestry woven from two everlasting threads, the infinite jivas or conscious souls and ajiva, the non-sentient matter that surrounds them. These two principles have simply always existed, locked in an intricate dance across unimaginable eons. The ultimate goal is not to please a god but for each individual jiva, which is inherently pure, omniscient, and blissful, to break free from its entanglement with ajiva and realize its true, perfect nature. This is a profoundly democratic and empowering cosmology. Every single soul, from the smallest microbe to the most enlightened sage, is on the same journey, and every soul is its own savior, responsible for its own liberation. This vast, uncreated cosmos is not a formless void but has a very specific and fascinating shape. Jain texts describe the loka, or the realm of existence where souls undergo their cycles of rebirth, as being structured like a giant cosmic man or woman standing with arms akimbo. This immense figure is broad at the waist and narrows at the top and bottom, representing the organized universe. At the very top, above the waist, are the various heavenly realms where souls enjoy temporary pleasures as a reward for good karma. At the very bottom, below the waist, are the hellish realms where souls suffer for their negative actions. And in the narrow middle, around the waist, lies our world and others like it, the human and animal realms where the crucial work of spiritual progress primarily takes place. Surrounding this entire loka is the aloka, an infinite, empty void where nothing exists, not even time or space as we understand it. This detailed, almost anatomical map of the universe wasn't just poetic imagery. It was a sophisticated cosmological model that guided their understanding of everything from ethics to astronomy. The engine driving all movement within this cosmic man is the inexorable wheel of time, which Jainism sees as forever turning in a non-linear cycle. Time is not a straight line marching from a beginning to an end, but a perpetual oscillation between two contrasting halves. The Utsarpini is the ascending or progressive half-cycle, a period where everything in the world gradually improves. Human morality, happiness, health, and even the length of life slowly increase. This era of gradual uplift is inevitably followed by the Avasarpini, the descending or regressive half-cycle where the opposite occurs. Virtue declines, suffering increases, and lifespans shorten. We are currently living in the fifth era of an Avasarpini, a period of increasing sorrow and difficulty. Each one of these half-cycles is calculated to last an astonishing 21,000 trillion years. This cyclical view removes any notion of a final paradise or a linear path to a singular end of history. Instead, the universe itself is in a constant state of rhythmic flux, and our role within it is to strive for liberation regardless of whether the age is one of progress or decline. This entire system places the weight of destiny squarely on the shoulders of the individual through the meticulous mechanism of karma. In Jain thought, karma is not just a vague philosophical concept, it is a very real, subtle form of matter itself. Every action, every thought, and even every utterance attracts these karmic particles, which then adhere to the soul, weighing it down and obscuring its innate qualities of infinite knowledge and bliss. This is why the soul is trapped in the cycle of rebirth. The path to liberation, therefore, is to stop the influx of new karma and to shed the karma that has already accumulated. This is achieved through an intense ethical and ascetic life centered on the principles of ahimsa, or non-violence in thought, word, and deed, and through rigorous practices of meditation, fasting, and discipline. By purifying the soul of all karmic matter, it becomes light and free, rising to the very top of the universe to reside in a state of isolated, eternal bliss, forever apart from the cyclical turmoil of the loka. This profound and complex world, you did not exist in an intellectual vacuum. The need to understand the cosmos in such intricate detail drove Jain scholars to make groundbreaking contributions to mathematics and science. Their theories on atomism were remarkably advanced. They proposed that all matter was composed of indivisible, eternal atoms that could combine in various ways, a concept that rivals similar ideas from the Greeks. Their cosmological inquiries led them to develop a sophisticated mathematics of the infinite. They meticulously calculated the dimensions of the loka, the lifespan of the universe, and even the number of souls within it, working with mind-bogglingly large numbers that required the development of unique mathematical notations and concepts. Jain texts contain detailed classifications of different types of infinity, a philosophical and mathematical exploration that was centuries ahead of its time. Their astronomical models, while geocentric like most ancient systems, were incredibly precise and detailed, used for calculating time and calendar events with great accuracy. This demonstrates that their non-theistic universe was not a simple negation of God, but a rich, logical, and deeply observed alternative that sought to explain reality through natural laws and meticulous inquiry, standing as a powerful testament to the incredible diversity of philosophical thought that flourished in ancient India. While many ancient cultures sought to pinpoint a single moment of cosmic genesis, the Celtic peoples of Ireland, Wales, and Britain wove a tapestry of myth where creation was not a finished event but a continuous, magical conversation between worlds. Their stories speak less of a universe made from nothing and more of a reality that is inherently layered, interconnected, and alive with possibility. We don't find a clear-cut account of the first gods forming the earth and sky. Instead, creation is revealed indirectly through the epic tales of the tribes who came to inhabit the land. Central to this is the figure of Danu, the great mother goddess, whose children are the Tuatha De Danann, the people of the goddess Danu. These luminous, powerful beings are said to have arrived in Ireland from 4 mythical cities located in the North: Falias, Gorias, Finias, and Murias, bringing with them 4 legendary treasures that embodied their divine power. They did not create Ireland from scratch. They brought a higher order to it, illuminating the land with their magic and wisdom, and in doing so, they became its spiritual heart, its very essence. This narrative frames creation not as a primal act but as an ongoing infusion of the mundane world with the sacred and the supernatural. This world view is built upon a profound sense of a layered cosmos, a universe where our tangible reality is just one plane of existence among many, all existing in parallel and intimately connected. The Celts envisioned realms like Annwn, a Welsh name for a mysterious underworld that was not a place of punishment but rather an abode of the dead, a source of divine inspiration, and a storehouse of magical animals and artifacts. Then there was Tir na an Og, the legendary land of youth across the Western Sea, a place of eternal beauty and joy where time stands still and aging is unknown. What makes this cosmology so captivating is that these realms were not distant or inaccessible. They were woven into the very fabric of the everyday world. The barriers between them were thin and permeable, existing at specific times of the year or in specific locations. Passage to the other world could be gained through ancient burial mounds known as Shia, which were seen as the dwelling places of the gods and the entrance to their realm. A sudden bank of mist, a lone hawthorn tree, or the shimmering surface of a secluded lake could also serve as a portal, a momentary gateway where the veil between the worlds parted, allowing for interaction, adventure, and sometimes perilous abductions. This deep connection between the earthly and the divine was not merely metaphysical. It was literally carved into the landscape and aligned with the heavens. The Celts were meticulous observers of the skies, and their astronomical knowledge was encoded into some of the most stunning monuments in Europe. Newgrange, in Ireland's Boyne Valley, is a spectacular 5,000-year-old passage tomb that predates both Stonehenge and the Egyptian pyramids. Its most breathtaking feature is a precisely engineered roof box, a small opening above the entrance. For a few precious minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, and for several days before and after, a narrow beam of sunlight travels up the long, dark passageway and illuminates the inner burial chamber with a golden light. This was clearly no accident. This celestial alignment, achieved with Neolithic precision, suggests a powerful symbolic connection between the sun's rebirth at the year's darkest point and the human cycle of death and rebirth. The light piercing the tomb's darkness was likely seen as a divine manifestation, a moment of communion with the ancestors and the gods, ensuring the sun's return and the renewal of life for another year. It is a permanent stone testament to a culture that saw the cycles of the cosmos and the cycles of life as one and the same. This perspective naturally gave rise to a calendar and a set of festivals that honored the continuous, cyclical nature of creation. The Celtic year was divided by 4 major seasonal festivals, with Samhain, celebrated on the 1st of November, being perhaps the most significant. This was not just a harvest festival, it was the moment when the veil between our world and the other world was at its absolute thinnest. It was a time of chaos and potential, when the spirits of the dead could walk among the living and the gods were close at hand. Bonfires were lit both for protection and as symbolic beacons. Rituals were performed to honor ancestors, and the community collectively acknowledged the intimate, necessary relationship between death and rebirth, between the end of one cycle and the beginning of the next. This stands in stark contrast to the linear, progressive time of modern thought. For the Celts, time was a wheel forever turning, and creation was not a one-time act but a perpetual process of interaction, exchange, and renewal between all the layers of existence. These ancient stories and practices, though suppressed by later Christianization, never truly vanished. They flowed like an underground river into the bedrock of European folklore, resurfacing in the tales of the Arthurian knights seeking the Holy Grail, a quest that often involved journeys into enchanted otherworlds. They live on in the countless stories of the fairy folk, those powerful, capricious, and timeless beings who inhabit the green hills and ancient woods, demanding respect and offering blessings or curses to those who cross their path. The entire rich tradition of Halloween, with its costumes, its acknowledgement of spirits, and its sense of playful dread, is a direct descendant of the Celtic Samhain. This enduring legacy invites us to expand our own vision of creation. It challenges us to see the world not as a static, finished product, but as a living, breathing process, a magical and ongoing conversation between the visible and the invisible, the mortal and the eternal, where every sunset, every changing season, and every ancient stone is a participant in the endless dance of existence. Long before the cosmic battles of Babylon echoed through Mesopotamia, the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers were home to a far older, more collaborative vision of how everything began. This was the world of the Sumerians, humanity's first recorded civilization, and their creation story offers a fascinating counterpoint to the violent struggles that would later captivate their successors. At the very source of their cosmos was not a warring god but a mother, Namu, the primordial sea. She was not a chaotic monster to be slain, but the formless, watery abyss from which all life itself initially emerged. In an act of profound generative power, this primeval goddess, entirely alone, gave birth to the first 2 distinct realms of existence, and the vast and overarching sky, and Kai, the solid and nurturing earth. These 2 deities, in turn, became the parents of the other great gods, setting in motion a divine family that would shape the universe not through conflict, but through wisdom and careful organization. The true architect of this ordered world was Namu's grandson, the clever and benevolent god Enki, lord of the fresh waters, wisdom, and magic. While other gods might wield raw power, Enki possessed a profound intellect and a sense of civic duty. He was the divine engineer who took the raw materials of existence and organized them into a functional system. He assigned each deity their specific domain and responsibility, one to oversee the plow, another to oversee the harvest, another to oversee the weaving of cloth. This was a creation driven by administrative genius rather than martial victory, establishing a cosmic bureaucracy that mirrored the increasingly complex city-states the Sumerians were building on Earth. But the gods soon grew tired of the labor required to maintain this new world, and they complained bitterly to Enki's mother, Namu. Hearing their plight, she woke Enki and proposed a brilliant solution to create a new being that could take on this burdensome work. This led to one of the most detailed and humanizing accounts of humanity's origin. In the myth known as Enki and Ninmah, the gods gather and, under Enki's guidance, embark on the project of fashioning humankind. They purify themselves, then Enki, the master sculptor, gathers clay from the watery abyss, a direct connection to his grandmother Namu, and shapes it into the first human forms. The mother goddess Ninmah then assists in giving them shape, and the womb goddesses Ninhursag and Ninmah breathe life into them. This narrative is strikingly collaborative. It isn't one god working in isolation, but a committee of deities each contributing their unique skills. Even the purpose of humanity, while to serve the gods, is born from a desire to solve a practical problem and ease a collective burden, not from the blood of a slain enemy. This reflects a worldview where creation is an ongoing process of problem-solving and intelligent design, a stark contrast to the cataclysmic violence of the later Babylonian tale. This intricate worldview, where every aspect of life was intertwined with the divine, demanded a system to record it, and so the Sumerians gifted humanity its first great technology, writing. The cuneiform script, formed by pressing a reed stylus into wet clay to create wedge-shaped marks, began as a practical tool for temple accountants to track livestock and grain stores. But it swiftly evolved into something far more profound. It became the vessel for recording myths, prayers, and, crucially, astronomical observations. Priests would meticulously note the movements of the planets they saw as wandering deities, the patterns of stars they interpreted as divine symbols, and the ominous events like eclipses which they believed were messages from the gods. Writing, therefore, was not separate from their spirituality. It was the very tool that linked the celestial will of the gods to the administrative order of human society, allowing them to document the divine blueprint they believed governed everything. To get even closer to that divine blueprint, they built stairways to heaven. The great ziggurats that dominated the skyline of cities like and Uruk were not merely temples, they were massive man-made mountains. Their stepped pyramidal design was intentionally symbolic, a bridge between the earthly realm of humans and the heavenly abode of the gods. At their summits, priests performed rituals and, just as importantly, observed the skies. These structures were the world's first observatories, platforms from which the learned elite could track the movements of the moon, Venus, and the constellations, calibrating their calendars and interpreting the will of the gods through the celestial clockwork. The ziggurat physically embodied their core belief that heaven and earth were connected and that humanity could, through piety and careful observation, understand and participate in the cosmic order. This cosmic worldview was the bedrock upon which Sumerian civilization built its staggering practical innovations. Their concept of a universe governed by divine laws directly inspired the creation of humanity's first legal codes, like the Code of Namu, which sought to bring that same order and justice to human interactions. Their advanced agricultural techniques, including complex irrigation systems that tamed the rivers, were a practical enactment of Enki's domain over fresh, life-giving waters. The very idea of the city-state itself, with its specialized labor, centralized administration, and organized religion, was a mirror of the divine hierarchy Enki had established. Every facet of their society, from the farmer in his field to the scribe in the temple, was underpinned by the belief that they were living within a universe created by wise, organizing gods, and that their role was to maintain that order through daily practice. To explore these ancient Sumerian myths is to journey back to the very roots of Western thought, to the moment where humanity first began to systematically write down its laws, study the stars, and build a society, all in an effort to understand its place within a cosmos thoughtfully designed by water, wisdom, and a primordial mother's love. While the Sumerians envisioned a collaborative creation born from wisdom and water, the Aztecs of Mesoamerica conceived of a cosmos forged in fire and sustained by the most precious substance of all, life itself. Theirs was a universe perpetually on the brink, a breathtakingly precarious reality where existence was not a given but a fragile gift that demanded constant, bloody renewal. This profound anxiety was encoded in their central creation myth, the legend of the 5 suns, which told of 4 previous worlds that had been created and then utterly annihilated by catastrophic forces. Each of these eras, or suns, was governed by a different deity and ended in a different kind of apocalypse: jaguars, hurricanes of wind, rains of fire, and great floods, each one wiping the slate clean and forcing the gods to try again. This was not a linear march of progress but a cycle of trial and horrific error, a story that embedded the very real threat of total cosmic extinction deep into the Aztec psyche. The current age, the one in which we now live, is the 5th sun, known as Nahui Olan, or 4 movement. Its dramatic birth occurred at the sacred city of Teotihuacan, where the gods gathered in darkness to solve the problem of a sunless world. The task was simple yet terrifying. A god must immolate themselves in a colossal divine bonfire to transform into the new sun. 2 deities stepped forward. The first was Tecusistecatl, a wealthy and proud god who offered rich gifts of coral, gold, and beautiful quetzal feathers. The second was Nanahuatzin, a humble, poor, and diseased god covered in sores, whose only offering was his own sincere faith, demonstrated by his penance of cutting swaths of green grass instead of precious offerings. When the moment came for the great leap, Tecusistecatl approached the blazing furnace 4 times, but each time he recoiled in terror from the overwhelming heat. Nanahuatzin, without a moment of hesitation, closed his eyes and boldly jumped into the flames, consumed instantly. Shamed by this act of ultimate courage, Tecusistecatl finally followed him in. Shortly after, 2 suns rose in the sky, the brilliant Nanahuatzin and the slightly dimmer Tecusistecatl. Offended by the arrogance of having 2 equal suns, another god threw a rabbit into the face of Tecusistecatl, dimming his light and transforming him into the moon, whose markings we still see as the rabbit today. But the story and the sacrifice did not end there. The new sun, Nanahuatzin, now hung motionless in the sky. The other gods realized with dawning horror that his sacrifice, while noble, was not enough. For the sun to move across the heavens and begin the cycle of days and nights, it required a further, even more terrible offering: their own blood. In an act of collective duty, the god Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, began the gruesome work, cutting out the hearts of every other god present and offering them to the sun. Only after receiving this divine nourishment did the sun shudder into motion, beginning its eternal journey. This foundational myth established the central, chilling principle of Aztec cosmology. The sun was not a self-perpetuating celestial body, but a starving god that required a constant diet of Chalchihuath, the precious liquid of life, human blood, to continue its movement and stave off a final, eternal darkness. This terrifying responsibility to feed the sun fell squarely on the shoulders of humanity. The Aztecs believed that humans were created from the ground-up bones of previous races mixed with the blood of Quetzalcoatl, making them inherently indebted to the gods. Their entire societal purpose was to repay that cosmic debt through a continuous cycle of ritual warfare and sacrifice. The practice of human sacrifice was not mere bloodlust. It was a sacred, solemn duty, a form of cosmic maintenance. The victims, often warriors captured in specially arranged flower wars, were not considered criminals but honored messengers, their hearts offered to the sun and their blood symbolically nourishing the earth. The scale was immense, with thousands of sacrifices performed during major festivals atop towering pyramids designed to bring the priests closer to the heavens. This was the grim contract of the fifth sun. The gods had sacrificed themselves for humanity, and now humanity had to sacrifice itself for the gods, in a never-ending cycle of reciprocal debt that kept the fragile universe alive. To manage this precarious existence with precision, the Aztecs developed one of the most sophisticated and complex calendrical systems ever created. They operated two main cycles simultaneously. The Zu-po-huali was the 365-day solar year, divided into 18 months of 20 days each, with 5 ominous, unlucky days at the end. This calendar governed agricultural cycles, seasonal festivals, and the timing of most public rituals. Interlocking with it was the Tonal-po-huali, or the 260-day sacred cycle. This was not based on any astronomical phenomenon, but was a divinatory calendar used to determine the fate of individuals and the most auspicious days for any action. Each day was a unique combination of one of 20-day signs and a number from 1 to 13, creating a 260-day round that was believed to influence every aspect of life, from the destiny of a newborn to the outcome of a battle. The completion of a full 52-year cycle, when both calendars realigned, was met with the terrifying new fire ceremony. At this time, all fires across the empire were extinguished, and people waited in dread as priests watched the star cluster we call the Pleiades. If it passed directly overhead, it meant the world would continue for another cycle. A new fire was then lit in the chest of a sacrificial victim, and this flame was carried to every home, relighting the empire in a powerful symbol of rebirth and renewed hope. This entire cosmic drama was physically manifested in the breathtaking layout of their capital, Tenochtitlan. Built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, the city was a marvel of urban planning and sacred geometry. At its absolute center stood the Templo Mayor, the Great Pyramid. This was not a single temple but a double pyramid, with one side dedicated to Tlaloc, the god of rain and agricultural fertility, and the other to Huitzilopochtli, the god of sun and war. This dual structure perfectly encapsulated the two pillars of Aztec life, the need for rain to grow crops and the need for war to feed the sun. The entire city was laid out as an axis mundi, a cosmic center, with its 4 great causeways leading out to the cardinal directions, mirroring the structure of the universe. Temples and buildings were aligned with celestial events such as the equinoxes, ensuring that the city itself was a living machine, perfectly tuned to harmonize with the cycles of the cosmos and channel the divine energy needed to keep the fifth sun moving on its perilous journey. While many traditions search for a single divine spark that set the cosmos in motion, Buddhism presents a radical and profound alternative, a universe without a first cause, without a creator god, and without an ultimate beginning. This vision is captured in the foundational principle of Pratityasamutpada, a Sanskrit term often translated as dependent origination or interdependent co-arising. It's a deceptively simple yet staggeringly deep concept that everything in existence, every thought, every galaxy, every feeling, every person, does not appear out of nothingness or by a singular will. Instead, every phenomenon arises only because a vast, intricate, and endless web of causes and conditions has converged to support its appearance. Nothing exists independently. everything is intimately connected to and dependent upon everything else. A rainbow, for example, is not a tangible object you can grasp. It is a beautiful, fleeting event that occurs only when sunlight, moisture in the air, and a specific observer's perspective all come together at exactly the right moment. The moment one of those conditions changes, the rainbow vanishes. In the same way, Buddhism teaches that our entire experienced reality is like that rainbow, a shimmering, interdependent illusion that emerges from a ceaseless flow of causes and conditions. This leads to a cosmological model that is both mind-bending and liberating. The universe is not seen as having been created at a specific point in time, but as being beginningless and endless, moving through immense, rhythmic cycles known as kalpas. These are not merely cycles of life and death on a planetary scale, but vast eons of universal formation, stability, gradual dissolution, and a subsequent period of voidness before the process begins anew. What drives this endless turning? Not the whim of a deity, but the impersonal, natural law of karma. Karma, in its truest sense, is not fate or reward and punishment, but simply the law of moral causation, the understanding that intentional actions have natural consequences. The collective karma of all beings provides the energy, the momentum, for the universe to continuously reform itself in alignment with those actions. It's a self-sustaining system, an eternal dance of energy and matter, form and emptiness, all governed by the ethical quality of the consciousness within it. You might wonder, then, about the many colorful Buddhist stories that seem to describe a creation, like those found in the Agana Sutta. This text describes a world where beings, initially radiant and self-luminous, gradually become coarse and material as they develop greed and desire, leading to the formation of the earth, the sun, and social structures. The crucial point is that these narratives were never intended to be taken as literal, historical accounts of how the planet physically formed. The Buddha himself advised against such literal interpretations of his teachings. Instead, these stories are profoundly psychological allegories. The Agana Sutta is not about the origin of the external world, but about the origin of our internal experience of suffering, our sense of self, and our attachment to a material reality that we mistakenly believe is solid and separate. It's a story about how consciousness, through its own choices and attachments, creates the world it experiences. It maps the process by which a simple, aware presence becomes entangled in the drama of identity, possession, and conflict, thereby constructing its own perceived universe of separation and dissatisfaction. This deeply empirical and introspective approach naturally extended to the study of the external world. Ancient Buddhist monasteries in India and later in China became renowned centers of learning for astronomy and mathematics. But their motivation was unique. Monks like the brilliant Aryadva or the Chinese master Yixing studied the stars not to divine the will of gods, but to better understand the universal principles of impermanence and interdependence. Tracking the predictable cycles of eclipses and planetary movements was a powerful demonstration that even the grandest celestial bodies are subject to constant change and are part of a vast, interdependent system. Their sophisticated mathematical calculations, including early work on calculus-like concepts and infinite series in India, were tools for contemplating the infinite. They developed complex models of the cosmos, sometimes with Mount Meru at the center, not as scientific fact, but as a symbolic mandala, a meditation device to comprehend the scale of reality and the mind's place within it. For them, science was a form of spiritual practice, a way to dismantle illusions of permanence and independence by examining the mechanics of the universe itself. This stands in stark contrast to the theistic creation stories we've explored. There is no external architect, no supreme being who designs the world from the outside. Instead, the creative impulse is located within the mind itself. The universe is a collaborative, ongoing projection of the collective karma and consciousness of all beings within it. This places the responsibility for our reality squarely on our own shoulders. We are not passive subjects in a divinely orchestrated play. We are active participants in a constantly unfolding process of creation. This shifts the spiritual quest from one of seeking external revelation, waiting for a God to reveal the truth, to one of cultivating internal insight, of stilling the mind through meditation to see the true nature of reality directly for oneself. It invites a deeply contemplative engagement with the world, where every moment, every interaction is seen as a link in an infinite chain of cause and effect. In this view, creation isn't a one-time event that happened long ago. It is happening right now in every choice we make, every thought we think, and every intention we form, continuously weaving the fabric of the world we experience. Imagine a single, living axis around which the entirety of existence revolves, not a mountain or a pillar, but a tree of such immense scale that its branches hold the heavens and its roots claw into the deepest underworlds. This is Yggdrasil, the world tree, the great ash that is the central pillar and pulsating heart of Norse cosmology. It is far more than a mere location. It is the fundamental structure of the universe, a living entity that connects, nourishes, and endures all things. Its mighty branches stretch out over all the 9 worlds, cradling the golden realm of Asgard where the Aesir gods reside. Its massive trunk rises through Midgard, the world of humanity, a constant, unseen presence in the mortal realm. And its 3 great roots delve down into wells of incredible power and mystery, anchoring the cosmos in place and tapping into the very sources of fate, wisdom, and primordial chaos. Beneath these roots churn the waters of destiny itself. One root extends into the well of Erd, a sacred spring guarded by the 3 Norns, Erd, Verdandi, and Skuld, who represent the past, present, and future. These powerful figures are the weavers of fate, who carve runes into wood and pour water over Yggdrasil's roots to keep it healthy, directly linking the tree's well-being to the unfolding of time and destiny for all beings. A second root finds its way to Mimir's well, a spring of unimaginable wisdom named for its guardian, the god Mimir, who sacrificed his eye for a drink from its waters. This root is constantly gnawed upon by the relentless dragon Nidhogg, a symbol of the destructive forces that perpetually threaten the foundations of order. The third and final root reaches into the freezing mists of Niflheim, the primordial world of ice, where it drinks from the spring Hvergelmir, the source of all the rivers in the cosmos. This intricate system shows that Yggdrasil is not a passive structure but an active participant in the cosmic cycle, drawing sustenance from these wells and, in turn, supporting all of creation upon its boughs. Life teems across this great tree, a microcosm of the struggles and dependencies of the wider universe. At the very top of Yggdrasil, perched between its highest branches, sits a great, unnamed eagle, whose mighty wings are said to create the winds that blow through the worlds. This eagle is locked in a state of perpetual animosity with Nidhogg, the dragon chewing at the roots far below. Racing up and down the trunk between them is the squirrel Ratatoska, a mischievous and malicious messenger who carries insults from the eagle to the dragon and back again, deliberately fanning the flames of their hatred and ensuring the cosmic conflict continues. Meanwhile, 4 great stags Dane, Dvalin, Dunire, and Durathra leap among the branches, feeding on the tree's leaves. Even the goat Hydron, who provides the never-ending supply of mead for the warriors in Valhalla, is tied to the tree's vitality. This vibrant ecosystem of creatures, both benevolent and malevolent, illustrates the Norse understanding of the universe as a place of dynamic, often contentious, but utterly essential interdependence. Despite its immense power, Yggdrasil is not invulnerable. It is a symbol of resilience in the face of inevitable decay. The tree suffers terribly from the creatures that feed upon it. The stags nibble its leaves, Nidhogg gnaws its roots, and other serpents add to the damage. This constant suffering is a poignant reflection of the Norse worldview, where even the structure of the cosmos is subject to pain and entropy. It is a fragile equilibrium, one that requires constant care. The Norns' daily ritual of watering its roots with mud from Urd's well is not just an act of maintenance, it is a sacred duty to preserve all of reality from collapse. This powerful image of a wounded, yet enduring, world tree perfectly mirrors the cyclical nature of Norse mythology, where even the gods themselves are fated to fall at Ragnarok, only for the world to be reborn anew from the remnants of the old. Yggdrasil, too, is prophesied to shudder and groan during the final battle, but it is said to survive, sheltering 2 humans who will repopulate the reborn earth. The majesty of Yggdrasil was not confined to the pages of the Eddas. The Norse people saw its reflection in the night sky above them. Many scholars propose that the shimmering band of the Milky Way, arcing across the dark northern heavens, was seen as a celestial manifestation of the world tree's colossal trunk and branches. Others suggest it was interpreted as the world axis, the central pole around which the stars themselves rotate, an idea that connects it to similar cosmic pillar concepts found in shamanic traditions across Siberia and North Asia. This practice of mapping mythology onto the observable cosmos is a testament to how deeply these stories were woven into their understanding of the natural world. The sky was not an empty void but a divine map, and Yggdrasil was its most important landmark. This profound arboreal metaphor is a stunningly universal archetype, appearing in cultures separated by vast continents and oceans. The indigenous Siberian peoples speak of a world tree that connects the upper, middle, and lower worlds, a central concept in shamanic journeys. In Hindu mythology, the Kalpavriksha, or wish-fulfilling tree, emerged from the churning of the ocean of milk and is considered the divine source of all abundance and life. Various Mesoamerican cultures, including the Maya, depicted sacred ceiba trees as pillars holding up the sky. This recurring motif suggests a deep, perhaps innate, human inclination to understand the universe not as a collection of separate parts, but as a single, living, interconnected system, a hierarchy of existence with a central trunk linking the underworld to the heavens and the mortal to the divine. Ultimately, Yggdrasil represents the ultimate price and reward of wisdom. It was upon this tree that Odin, the All-Father, hung for 9 days and 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, in a grueling act of self-sacrifice. He offered himself to himself, staring into the dark waters of Niflheim and facing his own mortality to grasp the secrets of the runes. This ordeal, detailed in the poem Havamal, was not a gift given but a knowledge earned through immense suffering and personal risk. It encapsulates the core Norse value that true understanding comes only through direct experience, exploration, and sacrifice. Yggdrasil is therefore more than a map of the worlds. It is a symbol of the perilous journey toward consciousness itself, a constant reminder that all things are connected, that existence is precious and fragile, and that the greatest truths are found not by looking outward, but by daring to journey inward, deep into the roots of one's own being. Yet for all their celestial power, these sky heroes were not distant, detached gods in some far-off heaven. Their presence is woven directly into the very earth beneath one's feet. To look at a particular rock formation, a winding river, or a specific waterhole is to see the frozen moment of their creative journey. This is where the concept of the Dreamtime or Alteringa becomes so profound. It is not a past event locked in history, but a continuous, eternal dimension that exists parallel to our own. The creative acts of the sky heroes are not finished. They are forever happening, and through ritual, ceremony, and the simple act of walking the land, Aboriginal people can tap into that eternal now, drawing on its power and reaffirming their responsibilities. This makes creation a participatory act, a shared project between the people, the ancestors, and the land itself, all held within the living memory of the dreaming. This deep, intimate knowledge was not abstract philosophy. It was a practical, living science essential for survival on a vast and often unforgiving continent. The stars were not just pictures in the sky, they were a complex library of information. The rising of the Pleiades cluster at a certain time of year might signal the start of the rainy season, telling communities it was time to move to higher ground. For coastal peoples, that same celestial event could announce the beginning of turtle hunting season, ensuring they harvested resources at the most sustainable and abundant time. The Milky Way, that great river of stars, was not just a path for spirits but a crucial navigational aid. Specific stars near the horizon functioned as celestial signposts, guiding travelers on long journeys across featureless deserts. Every story, every song, and every painting was a multi-layered text, encoding everything from navigation routes and seasonal calendars to ethical codes and intricate ecological knowledge about plant and animal behavior. This wisdom is preserved and passed down through the world's oldest continuous cultural traditions: oral storytelling, intricate songlines, and breathtaking rock art. Songlines are perhaps the most remarkable of these. They are intricate sequences of lyrics that describe the path of a sky hero across the landscape. To sing the song is to navigate the land, as each verse corresponds to a specific landmark, water source, or sacred site. A person who knows the song for a journey of hundreds of miles can literally sing their way across the country, their voice charting a course laid down in the Dreamtime. The rock art that depicts figures like the Wandjina is equally powerful. These images, often retouched and repainted by successive generations, are not mere representations. They are believed to hold and renew the creative power of the beings themselves, ensuring the continued arrival of life-giving rains and the fertility of the land. This stands in the sharpest possible contrast to the linear creation myths of the West, which often depict a single, finished act by a supreme deity. Here, there is no ultimate end to creation. The creative power is ever present, a constant, flowing current that humanity can access and interact with. It is a dynamic, living model of cosmic engagement that completely challenges our static, museum-like view of mythology. These are not dead stories about a dead past. They are active, living agreements between people and the universe. They teach that culture is not something separate from the cosmos, but an inseparable part of it. The stories in the sky and the stories in the law are one and the same, creating a holistic world, where every action has a consequence, every person has a role, and the sacred is as immediate as the ground you walk on and the stars that guide you home. Yet within the vast and intricate architecture of the divine, a single spark of curiosity would set in motion a chain of events unlike any other. This was Sophia, whose name means wisdom, one of the last and youngest of these eons. Filled with a passionate, yearning desire to truly know the depths of the unknowable Father, she reached out in an act of profound love and devotion. But this impulse was not channeled through her syzygy, not held in the balance of divine partnership. It was a solitary, passionate striving, and in that moment of unbridled longing, a thought was conceived without the consent or connection of her counterpart. This thought, this unstable and incomplete emanation, was not a true eon. It was a tragic error, a flawed and formless entity born from a desire that was pure in intent but unbalanced in its execution. This was the birth of Yaldabaoth, the being who would become known as the Demiurge. This Demiurge, this flawed god, was the embodiment of his origin, ignorant, arrogant, and powerful. Ejected from the perfect pleroma into the chaotic void below, he believed himself to be the one and only God. In his profound loneliness and towering vanity, he set about to create a universe in his own image. "I am a jealous God, and there is no other God beside me," he declares in Gnostic texts, a direct and deliberate inversion of the biblical proclamation. Using the divine power he had inherited from his mother Sophia, but utterly devoid of her wisdom, he fashioned the material world. But this creation was not the good and ordered cosmos of Genesis. The Gnostics saw it as a clumsy, pathetic imitation of the true spiritual realities of the pleroma, a pale shadow, a prison planet designed to trap the divine light. He populated this world with archons, ruthless cosmic rulers and jailers who control the celestial spheres and seek to keep humanity ignorant and enslaved to the material realm. The most tragic and pivotal moment in this entire drama involves the fate of humanity. Within the material bodies crafted by the Demiurge and his archons, they unknowingly trapped something precious, the divine spark, the pneuma, that had fallen with Sophia's error. This spark is the true spiritual self, a fragment of the ultimate divine, now buried deep within the unconsciousness of every human being. We are, in the Gnostic view, divine strangers in a strange land, amnesiacs who have forgotten our true heavenly origin. The material world, with all its suffering, pain, and decay, is not our home but our place of exile. Our physical bodies are not temples but tombs, temporary vessels holding our captive spirit. This radical perspective completely inverts the traditional creation narrative. The world is not a gift from a benevolent father but a tragic mistake, a cosmic quarantine zone established by a blind and foolish tyrant. The entire purpose of human existence, therefore, is not to worship the creator of this world, but to remember who we truly are and to find our way back home. This awakening is achieved through gnosis, a word that means much more than intellectual knowledge. It is a direct, intuitive, and transformative knowledge of the divine within. It is a shocking recollection of one's own origin in the light, a profound self-realization that liberates the spirit from the illusion of the material world. This gnosis is not granted by faith or by obedience to the Demiurge's laws, but is revealed from within, often through a hidden savior figure. In many texts, this is Christ, understood not as a sacrificial lamb for sin, but as a divine emissary from the true pleroma, a messenger of light who descends through the planetary spheres, tricking the archons to bring the secret knowledge that can set our spirits free. His message is simple: know yourself, and you will know that you are a child of the ultimate, unknowable God, and that the ruler of this world is a fraud. This breathtakingly complex and psychologically rich mythology was ultimately declared heretical by the emerging Orthodox Christian Church in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. Its radical rejection of the material world as evil and its depiction of the Old Testament God as a malicious impostor were direct threats to the Church's authority and its doctrine of a good creation. Gnostic texts were hunted down, burned, and suppressed, their teachings driven to the very margins of history. They only survived by being buried in jars in the Egyptian desert, waiting nearly 1,600 years to be rediscovered at Nag Hammadi in 1945. Yet, even in their suppression, these ideas refused to die. They flowed like a subterranean river, resurfacing to influence medieval mystics like the Cathars and Bogomils, who saw the world as the creation of Satan. Their echoes can be heard in the works of modern psychologists like Carl Jung, who saw the Gnostic journey as a powerful allegory for the process of individuation, integrating the unconscious to achieve psychological wholeness. The Gnostic Sophia myth remains one of the most radical and enduring challenges to traditional thought, a powerful invitation to look beyond the surface of the world and to seek the spark of the infinite hidden deep within ourselves. While many cultures envision creation as a descent from the heavens or an emergence from a cosmic sea, the indigenous peoples of the American Southwest tell a profoundly different kind of origin story, one that unfolds not from above but from below in a great collective ascent toward the light. This is the powerful narrative of emergence, a journey through successive underworlds that reflects a deep understanding of spiritual and physical evolution. For tribes like the Navajo and the Hopi, the world we inhabit is not the first world, but the latest in a series of realms, each one teaching crucial lessons about how to live in harmony and balance. The Navajo or Dene people capture this epic voyage in their foundational narrative, the Dene Bahane adjective, which begins not in a void but in a dark, small first world deep within the earth. Here, the first beings, insects, animals, and spirits lived together in a state of imperfection, often in conflict. Their disharmony forced them to seek a new beginning, and so they began their climb, journeying upward into a second world, then a third, each time encountering new peoples and new challenges that prompted further growth and necessitated another exodus. This upward movement through the four colored worlds, black, blue, yellow, and finally, the glittering white of our current world, is not just a physical migration but a powerful metaphor for the process of learning, maturing, and striving for a more complete existence. This arduous journey was guided and ultimately completed with the help of sacred, transformative figures. Upon reaching the surface of this fourth world, the emerging beings were not yet fully formed. They were met by Changing Woman, perhaps the most revered deity in Navajo culture. She is the embodiment of the earth itself, of cyclical time, and of nurturing life. Through her profound power, she created the four original Navajo clans from the skin of her own body, literally shaping the people and giving them their identity and their purpose. Alongside her were the holy people, powerful spiritual beings who taught the Navajo everything they would need to survive and thrive. They instructed them in the sacred rituals like the Blessing Way ceremony, which maintains harmony and health, and the Enuma Way, which protects against evil. They gave them the intricate and beautiful practices of sand painting for healing, and taught them the complex structure of their matrilineal society. Often, these narratives also feature heroic twins, like the Navajo monster slayers, who journey across the New World to confront the giants and monsters that make it unsafe, using lightning bolts as weapons to vanquish chaos and make the world habitable for their people. This combination of a nurturing mother figure and active, organizing heroes illustrates a beautiful balance in their world view between the receptive, creating forces of the earth and the proactive, protecting forces that establish order. The cosmos above provided the literal roadmap and the spiritual context for this entire emergence. The path of the journey itself is often mirrored in the stars, with the Milky Way seen as the celestial pathway of the soul, the same river of light that the first beings might have followed. The Pleiades star cluster, known to many tribes, holds particular significance. For some Pueblo peoples, their emergence onto this world is timed with the rise of the Pleiades, forever linking their existence to that cosmic clock. These astronomical features were not just symbolic, they were practical guides. The The careful observation of celestial cycles dictated the timing of ceremonies, the planting of crops, and the movement of game, seamlessly weaving the sacred narrative of emergence into the practical reality of daily survival. The sky was a constant, visible reminder of their journey and their place within a vast, interconnected universe. What truly sets these emergent stories apart is their powerful emphasis on process over product. Creation is not a one-time event that happened long ago and was finished. It is a continuous collective endeavor that is still unfolding. The journey through the worlds did not end when the people reached the surface. It simply entered a new phase. The responsibility now falls upon the people to maintain the balance of this world through their actions, their ceremonies, and their reverence for the land. This worldview fosters an incredible sense of resilience and adaptability. If a world becomes corrupted or unbalanced, the solution is not to wait for a savior, but to learn, adapt, and move forward together to emerge into a better way of being. This is a philosophy born from a people who have endured immense hardship and change, yet have persevered by holding onto these core narratives that teach transformation and perseverance. In our modern era of environmental crisis, these ancient narratives offer not just wisdom, but an urgent imperative. The emergent stories teach a fundamental lesson of reciprocity. Humans did not simply arrive on a planet that was ready for them. They participated in its creation and have a sacred duty to participate in its ongoing care. The Earth is not a resource to be exploited, but a relative to be respected, a world that was earned through struggle and sacrifice. This perspective of deep, inherent reverence for the natural world, where every mountain, river, and animal is a relative with its own spirit and purpose, provides a stark and powerful contrast to the mindset of domination and extraction that has led to so much ecological damage. By listening to these stories, we are invited to see ourselves not as masters of the earth, but as partners in its continuous creation, tasked with the humble and vital work of preservation for the generations yet to emerge. Leaving behind the structured dualisms and cosmic battles of other traditions, we find ourselves in a realm where creation unfolds not through divine command or violent struggle, but through a slow, patient, almost lonely act of waiting, set to the rhythm of a powerful, magical song. This is the world of the Finnish Kalevala, an epic poem that offers one of the most unique and hauntingly beautiful creation narratives ever composed. Here, the universe begins not with a bang, but with a solitary figure adrift on a formless, endless sea. The goddess Ilmater, the daughter of the air, descends from the heavens and finds herself alone for centuries upon centuries, floating and sleeping on the primal waters, her existence one with the vast, empty expanse. She is both a divine being and a passive womb of potential, waiting for a spark to set the process of creation in motion. This prolonged period of solitude is broken not by a great thought or a battle cry, but by a sudden change in the wind and a great tempest that stirs the waters, finally awakening Ilmater from her long slumber and setting in motion the events that will shape the cosmos. In the churning waves, a majestic sea eagle soars overhead, searching for a place to build its nest. It spots Ilmater, and specifically, the knee she raises above the water's surface, mistaking it for a small, grassy hillock. There, upon her knee, the bird builds its nest and lays 7 beautiful eggs, 6 made of iron and 1 of iron, each glowing with a warm, radiant light. For days, Ilmater remains perfectly still, a patient and nurturing vessel for this new life. But a sudden movement, a shift of her leg perhaps caused by the heat of the eggs or a ripple in the water, sends the nest tumbling. The eggs shatter upon the waters, and from their broken pieces, the physical world is miraculously formed. The yolks coalesce to become the bright, glowing sun, while the whites transform into the shimmering, silvery moon. The scattered fragments of the speckled shells become the stars that dot the night sky, and the larger pieces of dark shell settle to form the solid earth itself. This is a creation of breathtakingly intimate and organic poetry, where the entire cosmos emerges from the fragments of a simple bird's nest, born from the body of a patient goddess and a simple, accidental event. This act of creation through fragmentation is just the beginning. The Kalevala is fundamentally an epic about the power of sound, of words, and of song to shape reality. The central hero of the epic is not a warrior who conquers with a sword, but Väinämöinen, an ancient and powerful wizard, an eternal sage whose primary weapon is his voice. He is the master of the Luonto, the Finnish concept of a personal spiritual power that can be harnessed and directed through incantations known as loitsat. In the world of the Kalevala, to know the true origin song of a thing, be it a tree, a disease, a piece of iron, or even a bear, is to have complete power over it. The epic is filled with thrilling duels of magic where rivals do not clash with weapons, but with competing songs, each trying to recall a deeper, more ancient verse to overpower the other. This shamanic world presents the universe as a great, interconnected web of stories, and to sing the correct story is to tap into the fundamental fabric of existence and reshape it according to your will. This deep connection to the natural and spiritual world was essential for survival in the harsh and beautiful landscape of the Nordic North. The long, dark winters and vast, trackless forests demanded a profound intimacy with the environment. Finnish folklore is rich with practical astronomical knowledge seamlessly woven into its mythical tapestry. The stars were not just distant lights, they were vital tools for navigation across frozen lakes and through dense, snowy woods. The constellation of Orion's belt was known as Väinämöisen Viikate, Väinämöinen's scythe. The Big Dipper was called Ottava, the salmon weir, a crucial constellation for marking the turning of the seasons. And dancing above it all were the Revontulet, the northern lights, known as the foxfires. One of the most beloved myths tells of a magical fox running across the snowy fells, its tail brushing against the snow and sending sparks flying up into the sky to create the magnificent aurora borealis. This is a perfect example of how a spectacular natural phenomenon was explained through a story that is both whimsical and deeply connected to the local fauna. The Kalevala itself is a fascinating story of cultural recreation. These ancient stories and songs had been passed down orally for countless generations by rune singers in the rural regions of Karelia. In the 19th century, as Finland sought to assert its national identity and distinguish its culture from its Swedish and Russian rulers, a country doctor named Elias Lönnrot undertook a series of epic journeys. He traveled to these remote villages, listening to the rune singers and meticulously collecting and writing down these disparate poems. He then masterfully wove them together into a single, cohesive epic, the Kalevala, which he published in 1835. This book did not merely preserve folklore, it effectively created a national epic from the raw materials of oral tradition, providing the Finnish people with a mythological foundation and a shared cultural heritage that fueled a surge of national pride and artistic inspiration. It became a cornerstone of the national awakening that eventually led to Finnish independence. This unique blend of passive creation, shamanic song, and natural wonder offers a profoundly distinct voice in the global chorus of cosmic legends. It presents a universe that is not built or battled into existence, but one that emerges almost gently from a combination of patient waiting, accidental happenstance, and the conscious application of artistic will through poetry and music. The Kalevala reminds us that creation is not always an act of force. It can be an act of allowance, of nurturing, and most importantly, of storytelling. It stands as a timeless testament to the idea that the words we speak and the songs we sing are not merely descriptions of the world, but active, powerful forces that participate in its continuous making, shaping our reality from the inside out with every note we choose to voice. High in the thin, frigid air of the Himalayan plateau, where the sky feels vast and the mountains touch the heavens, an ancient spiritual tradition developed a vision of creation that is both deeply mystical and intensely practical. Before the arrival of Buddhism, the indigenous Bon religion provided the people of Tibet with a complex cosmology that began not with a bang or a battle, but with a profound and silent emptiness. From this ultimate void, a radiant, pure white light spontaneously emerged, a luminous manifestation of potential that would coalesce into the first conscious being. This was Sangpo Bumtree, the first god, who did not craft the world with his hands or words, but through the immense power of his meditation. Through focused thought and spiritual emanation, he brought forth the elements, the deities, and the structure of the universe itself, setting in motion a cosmos that is both sacred and perpetually in need of care. This universe, as detailed in Bon texts, is not a simple realm of heavens above and hells below. It is an intricate system of 9 successive worlds, layered vertically and connected through a central axis, often symbolized by a mountain or a tree. Each of these worlds is home to a vast pantheon of beings, gods, demons, spirits, and elemental forces, all interacting in a delicate and dynamic balance. The influences on this system are as old as the Tibetan plateau itself, drawing from the even more ancient kingdom of Zhangzhung, which flourished in western Tibet. The language and esoteric practices of Zhangzhung are considered the wellspring of Bon knowledge, suggesting a spiritual lineage that reaches back into the deepest mists of Himalayan history. This complex cosmology reflects a worldview where the universe is alive with consciousness, a living ecosystem of visible and invisible forces constantly interacting. To navigate this animate universe, the Bonpos developed a sophisticated understanding of the celestial cycles above them. Their astronomical observations were remarkably precise, driven by the need to maintain harmony between the human, natural, and divine realms. Bon priests meticulously tracked the movements of the sun, moon, and planets, predicting eclipses and noting the positions of stars not out of abstract curiosity, but as a vital part of their spiritual duty. These celestial events were not mere spectacles. They were moments of heightened energy and potential disruption in the cosmic balance. A solar eclipse, for instance, might be seen as a temporary victory of a demonic force over the solar deity. Therefore, their calendar making was a sacred science, intricately weaving astronomical data into the ritual calendar to determine the most auspicious times for ceremonies designed to soothe angry spirits, honor benevolent deities, and ensure the stability of the world. This leads to one of the most fascinating aspects of the Bon creation narrative, the idea of a world co-created by both gods and demons. Unlike traditions where a single benevolent deity fashions a perfect world, Bon mythology often describes a more collaborative and contentious process. In some accounts, the very act of creation involves a negotiation or a struggle between these opposing forces. The world we inhabit is therefore not a perfected paradise but a kind of compromise, a delicate equilibrium that is inherently unstable. This worldview explains the presence of natural disasters, disease, and suffering not as a punishment or a fall from grace, but as a symptom of this balance being disturbed. It becomes the responsibility of humanity, through the guidance of Bon priests, to perform the necessary rituals, make the correct offerings, and live in an ethical manner to continually reinforce the forces of order and harmony against the ever-present pull of chaos. This ancient tradition did not disappear with the arrival of Buddhism in Tibet. Instead, it underwent a profound process of syncretism, blending with Buddhist philosophy and practices to form the unique character of Tibetan Buddhism as we know it today. Many Bon deities were adopted as protectors in the Buddhist pantheon, and numerous Bon rituals and meditative techniques were woven into the Buddhist tapestry. This fusion ensured the survival of Bon, allowing it to preserve a unique window into the pre-Buddhist soul of Tibet. It safeguarded an ancient ecological wisdom rooted in the belief that every mountain, lake, and forest is the abode of a spirit deserving of respect and reverence. This ethos fostered a sustainable way of life in one of the planet's most fragile environments, where humans saw themselves as stewards in a conversation with a living landscape. Ultimately, the Bon tradition presents a powerful and nuanced vision of creation. It is not a one-time event executed by a solitary divine architect, but an ongoing, collaborative effort that requires the participation of all beings, gods, demons, humans, and spirits alike. The universe is a dynamic, interactive system where equilibrium is not a guaranteed state, but a goal that must be continuously pursued through spiritual practice, mindful observation, and ritual action. Exploring Bon offers us invaluable insights into how a culture shaped by the extreme beauty and harsh demands of a mountain environment developed a spirituality that is both pragmatic and profound, reminding us that our relationship with the cosmos is not one of passive observance but of active and responsible partnership. Moving from the structured pantheons of other traditions, we find ourselves in the deep, evergreen forests and sprawling steppes of ancient Slavic lands, where the cosmos was not ruled by a distant, singular god, but was a living, breathing tapestry woven from the threads of fate itself. At the very source of this vibrant world stood Rod, whose very name means origin, kin, and destiny. He was not a god who created the universe and then stepped away. He was the primordial, all-encompassing force of generation itself, the very act of birth and becoming made divine. In some tales, he emerges from a cosmic golden egg, much like the traditions of India and Greece, hatching to bring forth the world. In others, more profound still, the entire universe simply manifests from his divine thoughts, a mental projection of staggering power. Rod then gave birth to the first generation of gods, including Svarog, the celestial smith, and Lodda, the goddess of love and harmony, establishing a divine family tree that rooted every aspect of existence in a shared ancestry. This makes Slavic cosmology deeply genealogical. The universe itself is a family, and all within it are related, bound by the sacred ties of kinship and a shared origin in Rod's generative will. This sense of a structured, interconnected cosmos is perfectly embodied by one of the most intriguing figures in the Slavic pantheon, Triglav, meaning three-headed one. This formidable deity was venerated particularly in the city of Szczecin by the West Slavic tribes, and his unique form was far more than a fearsome spectacle. Each of his three heads represented his sovereign rule over one of the three fundamental realms of existence. One head gazed into the heavens, the realm of the gods and celestial bodies. Another looked upon the earth, the world of humans, animals, and forests. The third head peered into the underworld, the domain of the ancestors and the mysteries of the afterlife. By veiling these heads with a golden cloth, his priests signified that Triglav saw and knew all secrets past, present, and future across all layers of reality. He was the ultimate symbol of a universe that was not a hierarchy with heaven on top and hell below, but a complete, integrated system where all realms were equally important, held in a sacred, triune balance. To honor Triglav was to acknowledge that life, death, and the divine were all part of one continuous, inseparable whole. This worldview of a fully animated universe meant that the divine was not locked away in a distant sky but was immediate, intimate, and present in every corner of daily life. The Slavic world was alive with a myriad of spirits, each presiding over a specific aspect of the domestic and natural world. The domovoi was perhaps the most beloved of these beings, a protective, sometimes mischievous household spirit who lived behind the stove or under the threshold. Families would leave him small offerings of food to ensure his favor and the well-being of the home. Beyond the doorstep, the forest was watched over by the Leshi, a shape-shifting guardian of the woods who could lead travelers astray or protect them, depending on their respect for his domain. Rivers had their Ruzalki, fields had their Polviks, and even the Banya, the bathhouse, had its own spirit, the Bannik. This wasn't mere superstition. It was a sophisticated ecological ethic that fostered a relationship of respect and reciprocity with the entire environment. Every action, from chopping a tree to drawing water from a well, was a form of communication with the conscious world, a constant reminder that humans were not masters of nature but participants in a community of seen and unseen beings. This profound connection to the natural world was guided by a deep and practical understanding of the skies above. Slavic astronomical knowledge was not abstract, it was a farmer's almanac written in the stars. They did not see the familiar Greco-Roman constellations, but their own patterns and names, often tied to agricultural cycles crucial for survival. The Pleiades cluster, for instance, was known as Baba or Volosageri, meaning the hairy ones or connected to the god Veles. Its appearance and disappearance in the night sky marked key times for planting and harvesting. The winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, was celebrated as Kolyada, a festival that honored the rebirth of the sun and the gradual return of light, ensuring the community's spiritual and physical sustenance through the harsh winter. These celestial events were not just observed, they were ritualized. Bonfires were lit on hilltops during solstices and equinoxes, serving as terrestrial suns to bolster the celestial one and to synchronize human activity with the eternal rhythms of the cosmos. The sky was a great turning clock, and their rituals were the hands that moved in time with it. The sacred duty of maintaining this cosmic order and preserving these intricate relationships fell to the community's storytellers and the oral tradition of the Babylonian. These epic narrative poems were far more than simple entertainment. They were the living encyclopedias of Slavic cosmology, history, and lore. Sung or recited by skilled bards, the Babylonian recounted the deeds of legendary heroes like the mighty Bogatars, who often battled chaotic forces that threatened the established order. Through these stories, each new generation learned not only their history and their heroes, but also the proper way to live in a world shared with gods and spirits. The Babylonian preserved the cosmic map, reminding people of their place within it and their responsibilities to uphold the balance that Rod had set in motion. This was how a largely pre-literate society maintained a complex spiritual and philosophical system for centuries, ensuring that the knowledge of how to live in a participatory cosmos was never lost. Despite the sweeping wave of Christianization that began over 1,000 years ago, these ancient beliefs refused to vanish. They simply flowed underground, merging with the new faith in a remarkable process of syncretism that defines much of Eastern European folk culture to this day. Christian saints often absorbed the attributes of the old gods. The prophet Elijah, for example, took on the thunderous role of Perun, racing across the sky in his chariot. The domovoi seamlessly became the protective guardian angel of the household. The vibrant tradition of painting Easter eggs, a hallmark of Slavic Christian celebration, finds its deep roots in pre-Christian spring fertility rituals honoring the return of the sun and the renewal of life. This persistence is a powerful testament to the resilience of a worldview that saw the divine in the everyday, a vision that could adapt and endure because it was so deeply woven into the fabric of home, harvest, and the turning stars. It offers a timeless lesson in seeing our own world not as a resource to be exploited, but as a sacred, conscious community to which we all belong, charged with the ongoing, collaborative work of creation. But what if the gods described in these ancient stories were not metaphors or spiritual beings, but literal, flesh and blood visitors from another world? This provocative question lies at the heart of the ancient astronaut theory, a modern narrative that seeks to rewrite our understanding of human history. Popularized in the late 1960s by authors like Erich von Däniken, this theory proposes a startling alternative to traditional archaeology. It suggests that many of humanity's most breathtaking achievements, the colossal pyramids of Giza, the mysterious giant drawings etched into Peru's Nazca Desert, the startlingly precise astronomical knowledge of the Dogon people, were not solely the products of human ingenuity. Instead, they are presented as potential evidence of contact with advanced extraterrestrial civilizations in our distant past. In this view, the great gods of mythology are reinterpreted not as symbolic forces of nature, but as actual alien astronauts whose advanced technology was so far beyond human comprehension that they could only be perceived as divine. Proponents of this idea look at the same ancient myths we've explored and offer a radically different reading. The Dogon's Nommo, those amphibious beings from Sirius, become not mythological symbols but literal descriptions of interstellar travelers. The Inca's Viracocha, who departed across the Pacific, is reimagined as an alien explorer returning to his ship. The descriptions of fiery chariots and shining vessels in texts from India to Mesopotamia are passed as eyewitness accounts of spacecraft, and the sudden, unexplained leaps in human technology and architecture are framed as knowledge transferred from a more advanced species. This theory taps into a very human desire to solve mysteries, to find a concrete, external answer to the question of how our ancestors accomplished such incredible feats with what we perceive as limited tools. It is, in many ways, a modern mythology itself, a story that uses the language of science and technology to explain the unexplainable, mirroring the ancient impulse to attribute the wonders of the world to powerful, otherworldly beings. However, the vast majority of archaeologists, historians, and scientists dismiss the ancient astronaut theory as pseudoscience. They point to a lack of any concrete, verifiable evidence, no alien artifacts, no scientifically valid biological remains, no technology that defies the known laws of physics. Mainstream scholarship argues that the theory consistently commits a grave error. It underestimates the brilliance, creativity, and capabilities of ancient human cultures. The construction of the pyramids is a monument to human engineering and immense social organization, not proof of alien laser tools. The Nazca lines can be understood through sophisticated, simple surveying techniques that the Nazca people possessed. The Dogon's knowledge of Sirius B, while fascinating, is more credibly explained through their own long-term astronomical observations or, less charitably, through potential contamination by Western visitors before they were formally studied. Critics argue that the theory often ignores the cultural context of these myths, stripping them of their spiritual, psychological, and metaphorical meaning to force them into a literalist science fiction narrative. This controversy, while often frustrating for experts, ultimately highlights something profound about the human condition. Our fascination with the ancient astronaut theory is more than just a curiosity about aliens. It is a reflection of our own relationship with the past and our place in the cosmos. It reveals a deep, perhaps innate, need to feel that we are not alone, that our journey as a species has been guided or influenced by a higher intelligence. This desire to find external answers for profound mysteries is a powerful force, one that has driven both scientific inquiry and spiritual wonder for millennia. The theory forces us to ask important questions about how we interpret anomalies in the historical record, and where we draw the line between open-minded investigation and unsupported speculation. It challenges us to respect the sophisticated wisdom of indigenous cultures without superimposing our own modern fantasies onto their beliefs. In the end, whether one finds the idea compelling or far-fetched, the enduring debate itself underscores our timeless and universal fascination with that greatest of all questions: where did we come from, and are we the only ones out here in the vast, star-filled dark? At first glance, the chasm between ancient myth and modern science seems unbridgeable. On one side, we have poetic narratives of cosmic eggs and world parents, born from the dreams of our ancestors. On the other, we have the precise mathematical language of the Big Bang Theory, a model describing our universe's violent birth from an infinitely dense, infinitely hot singularity approximately 13.8 billion years ago, followed by a relentless expansion that continues to this day. One is a tapestry woven from symbolism and story. The other is a framework built upon equations and empirical evidence. They appear to speak entirely different languages, one of the heart, the other of the mind. Yet, if we listen more closely, we begin to hear a fascinating and profound harmony emerging from what once sounded like discord. The human quest to understand our origins, it seems, follows a path with two distinct but parallel tracks. The most striking resonance lies in the very concept of a beginning from a single, unified point of all potential. The Big Bang's initial singularity, a state where all the matter and energy of the cosmos is contained in a point of unimaginable density, finds a powerful echo in the ancient metaphors we've explored. The Hindu Brahmanda, the Orphic cosmic egg, even the Polynesian cosmic darkness of Po, each of these symbols represents a state of unified wholeness, a contained universe waiting to unfurl. Our ancestors, without telescopes or particle accelerators, intuitively grasped a profound truth about existence, that everything we see around us, from the farthest galaxy to the ground beneath our feet, emerged from a common, singular source. They may have described it as an egg hatching or a giant's body being dismembered, while we describe it as a rapid inflationary event and nucleosynthesis. But the underlying intuition of a shared origin story is remarkably consistent across millennia. Furthermore, the ongoing narrative of the universe told by modern cosmology is not one of a static, finished creation. The cosmos is dynamic, evolving, and expanding, with galaxies rushing away from one another in a grand cosmic dance. This concept of a universe in a state of perpetual becoming, of continuous emergence, is a central theme in countless ancient traditions. The Aboriginal Dreamtime is not a story about a finished past but an eternal present where creation is ongoing. The Hindu cycles of creation and dissolution envision a universe that breathes in and out over incomprehensible eons. The Aztec fifth sun requires constant nourishment to keep moving. These are not visions of a clockwork universe built and abandoned by a distant creator. They are visions of a living, participatory cosmos, a perspective that is finding new resonance in our understanding of a universe that is still actively creating itself, with stars forging new elements in their cores and galaxies constantly reshaping. The late, great astronomer Carl Sagan perhaps said it best when he noted that both science and mythology are, at their core, driven by the same fundamental human impulse, a profound curiosity about the world and our place within it. They are simply different methodologies for satisfying that curiosity. Mythology uses the tools of story, symbol, and metaphor to weave a coherent narrative that explains the world and provides meaning, often answering the why. Science uses the tools of observation, experimentation, and mathematics to build testable models that predict behavior, primarily answering the how. For most of human history, these two methods were not separate disciplines but were woven together into a single, holistic understanding. The Mayan priests who accurately predicted the cycles of Venus were not merely scientists or merely priests, they were both. Their astronomical tables were sacred texts, and their celestial observations were acts of worship, all part of a unified quest to comprehend the divine order of the cosmos. This beautiful convergence invites us into a new and more generous dialogue, one where we value ancient myths not for their literal factual accuracy but for their profound poetic and philosophical truth. They are the cultural and spiritual expressions of humanity's first, bold attempts to answer the biggest questions we can ask. When we dismiss them as mere primitive stories, we lose access to a deep well of human wisdom and insight. Instead, by bridging these two realms, we can achieve a richer, more complete understanding. The Big Bang Theory tells us the mechanics of the universe's first moments, but it is the myth of the cosmic egg that captures the awe, the wonder, and the sheer mystery of that event. One gives us the map, the other gives us the reason for the journey. Together, they fulfill the deepest purpose of any origin story, to connect us both intellectually and emotionally to the magnificent cosmos of which we are a part. But how do we move from the grand stories told around ancient fires to the tangible proof etched into the very landscape? This is where the fascinating field of archeoastronomy enters the scene, acting as a brilliant translator between the language of myth and the silent testimony of stone. This interdisciplinary science meticulously investigates how our ancestors deliberately embedded their understanding of the heavens into their most enduring constructions, proving that their cosmic narratives were far more than just tales to tell. They were functional, sophisticated worldviews, literally set in stone to harmonize human life with the majestic and predictable rhythms of the cosmos. Consider the awe-inspiring circle of massive sarsen stones on Salisbury Plain. Stonehenge is not merely a primitive calendar, it is a monumental astronomical computer. Its primary axis is precisely aligned to the summer solstice sunrise and the winter solstice sunset. On the longest day of the year, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, casting its first rays deep into the heart of the monument. This was not a coincidence. For an agrarian society, marking the solstices was a matter of survival, signaling the time to plant, to harvest, and to prepare for the lean winter months. The structure served as a communal focal point, a place where the entire community could gather to witness this critical celestial event, reaffirming their connection to the cycles that govern their lives and ensuring their spiritual and physical well-being for the year to come. Journey now to the sands of Giza, where the Great Pyramid stands as perhaps the most famous example of celestial alignment. The four sides of this colossal structure are aligned with the four cardinal directions with an accuracy within a fraction of a single degree. Such precision, achieved millennia ago, continues to baffle engineers today, but the astronomical connections run even deeper. The so-called air shafts within the pyramid are now understood by many researchers to have been precisely angled to point toward significant stars. One shaft targeted the circumpolar stars, which the Egyptians known as the Indestructibles, stars that never set and were associated with eternal life. Another was aimed directly at Sirius, the star linked to the goddess Isis, and another at Orion's belt, the celestial embodiment of Osiris, the god of the afterlife. This wasn't just symbolic decoration. It was a concrete manifestation of their belief that the pharaoh's soul would use these shafts to ascend directly to his rightful place among the imperishable stars, forever joining the eternal cycle of the gods. Across the Atlantic, in what is now the American Southwest, the ancestral Puebloan people of Choco Canyon demonstrated their own profound astronomical genius. High on Fajota Butte, a natural rock formation cradles 3 large stone slabs. Behind them, a spiral petroglyph is carved into the cliff face. This arrangement creates the breathtaking sun dagger phenomenon. At precisely noon during the summer solstice, a dagger of sunlight slices directly through the center of the spiral. During the winter solstice, 2 daggers of light perfectly bracket the same spiral. And on the equinoxes, a single blade of light bisects it neatly in half. This sophisticated light show functioned as an incredibly accurate seasonal calendar, marking the sun's journey with a precision that governed their ceremonial cycle and agricultural practices, all achieved with nothing more than careful observation and a masterful understanding of light and shadow. These examples, from the moors of England to the deserts of Egypt and North America, reveal a universal truth. Ancient mythology and precise astronomy were not separate disciplines, they were 2 sides of the same coin. The stories of gods and heroes provided the narrative, the why behind the cosmos, while the astronomical alignments provided the practical, observable how. This knowledge was the bedrock of their societies. It regulated their complex ceremonial calendars, dictating when to hold festivals to honor the gods. It dictated their agricultural cycles, telling them exactly when to sow and when to reap. And on a deeper level, it provided a sense of order and meaning, placing them within a cosmos that was intelligent, patterned, and ultimately knowable. By studying these ancient observatories, we gain a tremendous appreciation for the sheer ingenuity of these early scientists. Without telescopes, without written formulas, and often without even the wheel, they achieved a level of observational accuracy that is nothing short of miraculous. They tracked cycles that spanned decades, even centuries, passing this precise knowledge down through generations with an unwavering dedication. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that the human desire to understand our place in the universe is a timeless quest. It is a drive that connects the builders of Stonehenge gazing at the solstice sun to the engineers at NASA, guiding a rover across the surface of Mars. We are still looking up, still seeking to decode the mysteries of the cosmos, and still building structures to help us see just a little bit further. While we've explored how ancient cultures mapped their myths onto the stars and stones of the physical world, there exists another, deeply internal dimension to these stories, a dimension that lives within the architecture of the human mind itself. This is the realm of the psychological interpretation, a perspective that suggests these grand narratives of cosmic origin are not just about the birth of the universe, but about the birth of consciousness within each of us. The pioneering psychologist Carl Jung proposed that creation myths are not merely historical accounts, but are profound expressions of what he termed the collective unconscious, a deep, inherited layer of the human psyche that is shared across all cultures and times. Within this shared psychological substrate, he argued, reside universal, primordial patterns of thought and imagery known as archetypes. These archetypes are the fundamental building blocks of our dreams, our stories, and our deepest fears and aspirations, and they find their most powerful and enduring expression in the myths that have shaped human civilization. Consider the recurring symbol of the cosmic egg, which we've encountered from India to Greece to the Pacific Islands. From a Jungian perspective, this is a classic manifestation of the self-archetype, representing wholeness, latent potential, and the unified state of being before the ego develops and creates a sense of separation. The act of the egg hatching is a powerful symbol of individuation. the psychological process of becoming a distinct, integrated individual, breaking out of the shell of unconsciousness to embark on the journey of self-discovery. Similarly, the chaos monsters that so many heroes must slay, like the Babylonian Tiamat or the Norse Ymir, can be seen as embodiments of the shadow archetype. They represent the untamed, chaotic, and often frightening aspects of our own unconscious minds, the repressed fears, desires, and impulses that we must confront and integrate to achieve psychological wholeness. These myths provide a safe, symbolic arena in which to face these inner demons, externalizing an internal struggle into an epic, manageable narrative. This process of engaging with myth is far from a mere intellectual exercise. It is a vital tool for navigating the most fundamental questions of human existence. Who am I? Why am I here? How do I deal with suffering and death? Myths provide a pre-built framework of meaning that helps both individuals and entire societies answer these daunting questions. They offer archetypal roles to step into: the hero, the mother, the sage, the trickster, providing a sense of identity and purpose. A young person hearing the story of Marduk's brave stand against Tiamat isn't just learning about a Babylonian god. They are internalizing a blueprint for how to confront overwhelming chaos in their own life, whether it's a personal crisis, a challenging career, or a moral dilemma. These stories give form to the formless anxieties of the human condition, transforming them into dragons that can be fought and journeys that can be completed. Jung fervently believed that actively engaging with these myths through study, reflection, and creative expression was a path to profound psychological integration and spiritual growth. By recognizing the archetypal patterns playing out in our own lives, the quests, the battles, the divine children, and the wise old men or women we encounter, we can better understand our own motivations, conflicts, and potential. This interpretive lens does not seek to replace or discredit the historical, astronomical, or cultural readings of these myths. Instead, it adds a rich and deeply personal layer of relevance. It suggests that the reason these stories have resonated so powerfully for millennia is that they speak a universal language of the soul, addressing the deep-seated psychological needs that are common to all people, regardless of their time or place of birth. Ultimately, this perspective invites us to see every ancient legend not as a distant, dusty relic, but as a mirror held up to our own psyche. The cosmic battle between order and chaos is also the battle within us to create order from our own chaotic emotions. The emergence of the world from a primordial sea is also the emergence of our conscious awareness from the depths of sleep or meditation. The hero's journey to slay a monster and win a treasure is our own journey toward self-knowledge and fulfillment. By interpreting these myths psychologically, we perform a beautiful act of translation, converting the sacred stories of our ancestors into a living wisdom that can guide, heal, and illuminate our modern lives, proving that the most important cosmos we can ever seek to understand is the one within. Yet these ancient stories offer far more than just a spiritual connection to the land. They encode incredibly sophisticated, practical ecological knowledge that was essential for survival. This wisdom is embedded in the very structure of the narratives, acting as a vital instruction manual for living sustainably within a specific ecosystem. The Aboriginal songlines are a perfect example, functioning as both a sacred map of the dreaming and a highly accurate navigational guide. The lyrics of these songs don't just tell a story, they describe the location of waterholes, the migration patterns of animals, and the seasonal availability of specific plants. A single story can tell you when the yams are ready to be harvested, when the mullet are running in the rivers, and when it's time to move to higher ground before the monsoon rains arrive. This intricate knowledge, passed down orally for thousands of generations, represents a deep, empirical understanding of the local environment, ensuring that resources were used judiciously and never exhausted. The myth becomes a living database, a cultural repository of biodiversity knowledge that promotes a balanced harvest and prevents overexploitation. This stands in the sharpest possible contrast to the worldview that has driven the modern environmental crisis, where nature is seen as a separate, inert resource to be dominated and extracted for maximum short-term gain. The industrial model operates on a principle of linear take-make-waste, a far cry from the cyclical, reciprocal relationships modeled in these ancient stories. Indigenous myths, by contrast, present a universe based on the fundamental law of return. In the Norse myth, the god Odin must sacrifice his eye to drink from the well of wisdom, a powerful metaphor that all true gain requires a reciprocal offering. You cannot simply take, you must also give back. This principle was enacted in practical ways. Many Native American hunting rituals included prayers of thanks to the spirit of the animal that had given its life, and agricultural practices often involved giving offerings back to the earth to ensure future fertility. This ethos fosters a sense of gratitude and responsibility that is largely absent from our contemporary systems of mass production and consumption. What makes these ancient narratives so profoundly relevant today is that they provide a ready-made ethical framework for addressing our current ecological emergency. They don't just diagnose a problem of disconnection, they offer a time-tested model for reconciliation. The concept of seeing the natural world not as a collection of objects but as a community of subjects of kin could fundamentally reshape our environmental policies. Instead of managing natural resources, we would be engaging in relationship management with our relatives. This shifts the imperative for conservation from one of grim duty to one of loving responsibility. It suggests that sustainability is not a technical problem to be solved with better engineering alone, but a relational one, requiring us to restore our place in the world, to learn the names of the plants and animals in our local ecosystems, and to understand our actions as part of a wider web of consequences. Ultimately, applying this ecological lens to creation myths reveals their truest purpose. They are not merely accounts of a beginning that happened long ago. They are ongoing, participatory conversations about how to live well within a living, conscious cosmos. They are invitations to see the world not as a stage upon which human drama unfolds, but as a co-creator in that drama. The river is not just water flowing to the sea. It is an ancient, storytelling ancestor whose course charts a sacred narrative. The mountain is not just a pile of rock, it is a steadfast, silent teacher of patience and endurance. By reviving these lessons, we aren't stepping backward into primitivism. We are stepping forward into a more mature, holistic, and humble relationship with the only home we have ever known, finally learning to listen to the wisdom in the wind and the stories written in the stones. The echoes of these ancient creation stories are far from confined to dusty textbooks or forgotten temples. They pulse with vibrant life in the very heart of our modern culture, providing a deep well of inspiration for storytellers, artists, and thinkers. When J.R.R. Tolkien set out to construct Middle-earth, he didn't invent its foundations from nothing. A renowned scholar of Anglo-Saxon and Norse literature, he deliberately drew from the same cosmic well we've been exploring. His world's creation myth, the Ainulindale, is a breathtaking symphony of divine music where the angelic Aina sing the world into existence under the direction of Eru Iluvata. This is a direct and beautiful echo of the Norse concept of the world being shaped from the void of Ginnungagap and the Norse emphasis on cosmic cycles and the inevitable struggle against darkness. Tolkien wasn't just writing fantasy, He was engaging in a form of modern mythopoeia, using the old archetypes to build a new but familiar cosmology that felt both invented and eternally true. This process of mythological adaptation explodes onto the screen in the blockbuster Marvel Cinematic Universe. The character of Thor, along with his home of Asgard, his father Odin, and his trickster brother Loki, are lifted almost directly from the pages of the prose and poetic Eddas. While the movies understandably simplify and superhero-ify the source material, the core elements remain: the mighty hammer Mjolnir, the rainbow bridge Bifrost, and the looming prophecy of Ragnarok. These narratives provide a powerful, pre-built framework for exploring timeless themes: the struggle for power, the burden of legacy, the tension between destiny and free will, and the very definition of what it means to be a hero or a god. By clothing these ancient struggles in modern special effects and relatable dialogue, they make these profound questions accessible and exciting to a global audience, proving that the thirst for cosmic drama is as strong today as it was 1,000 years ago. Perhaps the most subtle yet pervasive influence of these myths is woven into the very language we use to describe the universe. Every time an astronomer points a telescope toward the Milky Way, they are invoking a story from Greek mythology. The name comes from the word galaxias, meaning milky, based on the legend that the band of light in the night sky was formed by milk spraying from the breast of the goddess Hera. When we call a celestial body a planet, we are using the Greek word planetes, meaning wanderer, because ancient observers tracked these points of light as they moved against the seemingly fixed backdrop of stars, attributing their journeys to the whims of the gods. Even our solar system is named for Sol, the Roman sun god. This isn't just poetic trivia. It demonstrates that our scientific pursuit of objective truth is built upon a foundation of subjective, story-driven observation. The myths provided the first map, and even as we redraw it with new data, the original place names, born from imagination, stubbornly and beautifully remain. This enduring presence reveals a crucial truth about humanity. We are fundamentally a storytelling species. Cosmic narratives, with their grand scale and high stakes, offer a unique and timeless vessel for exploring our deepest concerns about identity, morality, and our place in the grand scheme of existence. They possess a remarkable plasticity, allowing them to be adapted, reinterpreted, and reinvented for every new generation and cultural context. The core symbols, the world tree, the cosmic egg, the heroic battle against chaos, are endlessly flexible, able to be fitted to new worldviews while retaining their emotional and psychological power. Recognizing these threads connecting ancient myths to modern movies, books, and even scientific terminology allows us to see mythology not as a relic of a superstitious past, but as a living, evolving tradition. It is a continuous conversation across time, where each generation adds its own voice to the ongoing saga. When a novelist dreams up a new universe or a filmmaker storyboards an epic battle between gods and mortals, they are not merely creating entertainment. They are participating in the same age-old process of myth-making that began when the first storyteller looked up at the starry sky and tried to explain how it all began, adding a new chapter to the oldest and most collaborative story ever told. Yet for all the stunning diversity we've explored, from the cosmic egg to the world tree, from the Dreamtime to the Big Bang, a compelling question persists. Is it possible that beneath the surface-level differences of these ancient stories, there runs a deeper, common current, a shared set of patterns that point to something universal about the human mind and our place in the cosmos? This is the driving quest behind comparative mythology, a field dedicated to seeking unified theories that connect these disparate narratives through their astonishingly common themes. It's not about reducing rich cultural traditions to a single, boring story, but about listening for the harmonious chords that resonate across continents and millennia, suggesting that when it comes to pondering our origins, humanity has often been singing variations on the same profound song. Pioneering this approach was the renowned scholar Joseph Campbell, who dedicated his life to mapping what he called the monomyth or the hero's journey, a universal pattern of departure, initiation, and return that he found embedded in everything from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the story of Buddha to the narrative arc of Star Wars. Campbell argued that these recurring patterns or archetypes are not evidence of cultural plagiarism, but are rather born from the shared psychological bedrock of the human species. We all experience birth, struggle, love, loss, and the fear of death. It's only natural that our stories, our attempts to make sense of these universal experiences, would manifest in similar ways. A flood narrative isn't just a literal memory of a past event. It's a powerful symbol of purification and rebirth, a wiping clean of the slate that appears in the myths of Mesopotamia, the Americas, and India. The concept of world parents, a sky father and earth mother whose separation creates the space for life, is another profound archetype that gives tangible form to the abstract concept of duality and the emergence of order from unity. This comparative work does far more than just create a checklist of similarities. Its greatest power lies in its ability to foster genuine cross-cultural understanding and empathy. By demonstrating how a culture we might perceive as foreign or ancient grappled with the same fundamental questions of existence that we do today, these parallels break down barriers. They allow us to see the Babylonian priest chanting the Enuma Elish not as a primitive idol worshipper, but as a thoughtful human being seeking to explain the violent storms and political struggles of his time through a cosmic lens. Not so different from a modern physicist seeking a unified theory to explain the forces of nature. This approach encourages us to appreciate the unique beauty of each cultural expression while simultaneously recognizing our shared membership in a species united by wonder. Perhaps most excitingly, this quest for unification is sparking a thrilling interdisciplinary dialogue that is blurring the ancient lines between the humanities and the sciences. Researchers are now exploring the tantalizing possibility that some myths might encode more than just psychological truths. They might preserve ancient observations of real cataclysmic events. Geologists are investigating whether widespread flood myths could be distant, cultural memories of rapid sea level rise at the end of the last ice age. Astronomers and anthropologists are collaborating to see if stories about a fiery serpent in the sky or falling stars could be descriptions of witnessed comet impacts or supernova, events so traumatic they were seared into the collective memory of humanity and passed down for thousands of years. This isn't about proving the myths are literally true, but about asking if they might be a unique form of data, a cultural fossil record that preserves insights into humanity's earliest encounters with a volatile and magnificent universe. In the end, this grand quest for connection reminds us of a simple, beautiful truth. The same burning curiosity that led a Sumerian priest to track the path of Venus, a Polynesian navigator to memorize the rising points of stars, and a Greek philosopher to ponder the first principle of all things, is the very same drive that fuels a modern astrophysicist peering into the depths of the James Webb Space Telescope. We are all, regardless of our time or technology, driven by a need to understand where we came from. By tracing the common threads woven through our oldest stories, we do more than just study the past. We cultivate a global perspective on our cosmic heritage, realizing that every culture has contributed a vital verse to the epic human poem of origin. This shared fascination is our true unifying theory, a testament to the fact that we have always been, and will always be, a species gazing up at the stars and telling stories about our home. From the cosmic eggs of Hinduism and Greece to the emergent worlds of the Navajo, we've journeyed through a breathtaking tapestry of legends that reveal how ancient civilizations sought to understand their place in the cosmos. These stories, rich with astronomical wisdom, ecological insights, and profound psychological depth, show that creation myths are far more than quaint tales told around a fire. They are the profound expressions of a universal human curiosity and creativity, a deep-seated need to find meaning in the vast and often intimidating universe that surrounds us. They remind us with a powerful intimacy that our ancestors, separated from us by thousands of years and miles, stood beneath the very same blanket of stars that we gaze upon today. With no light pollution to dim their glory, they looked up and saw not random points of light, but a living library, a divine map, and a celestial storybook. They wove intricate narratives that connected the earth beneath their feet to the heavens above their heads, binding the human experience to the infinite in a way that gave their lives purpose and context. As we unearth and explore these ancient legends, we do far more than simply honor the intellectual and spiritual achievements of past cultures. We tap into a deep well of inspiration that holds incredible relevance for addressing the most pressing challenges of our modern world. The ecological wisdom embedded within the Aboriginal Dreamtime or the Polynesian concept of kinship with the land offers a radical and desperately needed alternative to our current model of environmental exploitation. These stories teach us about reciprocity, balance, and seeing the natural world not as a resource to be consumed, but as a family to be cherished. On a more personal level, in an age often marked by existential anxiety and a search for meaning, these myths provide timeless psychological frameworks. The Gnostic quest for inner knowledge or the Hindu concept of Maya invite us on a journey of self-discovery, suggesting that the answers we seek about the universe might be found by first looking within ourselves. They give us archetypes to navigate our own struggles, transforming personal chaos into a heroic journey and offering comfort that our questions are part of a human conversation that has been ongoing since the dawn of consciousness. So let these cosmic creation stories ignite a lasting sense of wonder within you. Let them encourage you to step outside on a clear night, to look up at the star-studded sky, and to see it with new eyes, not just as a void of empty space, but as a canvas upon which humanity has projected its greatest hopes, its deepest fears, and its most enduring dreams for millennia. See the constellations not just as patterns, but as chapters in an epic that spans the globe. We would love to hear which of these legends resonated most deeply with you, so share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. If this journey through the mysteries of space and story captivated your imagination, please subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the universe's greatest enigmas. Never stop questioning, never stop wondering.